Hello, and welcome to the Kelcast, the Hearthstone Arena podcast where we try to get better without cursing. I'm Keldar, a longtime Arena player and streamer on Twitch, and joining me this week is Isherwood, another great Arena player. So remember, if you want to find us on social media, you can search for Keldar on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter. That's Keludar. You can also search the Kelcast on Google, and it'll all come up if you want to find it on whatever social or whatever medium you want to listen to it on. All right, so you might be wondering why Kellen is not here this week, and he's having kind of an emergency situation with the weather out there. And literally like an hour ago, he told me that he will not be able to make it. Luckily, though, we did get all of his votes tallied, so he can at least still have his input. He can yell at us next week when we certain some of the cards that he wanted didn't make it through. So this is the 21st episode of the Kelcast, and we are presenting to you the Grand Arena Tournament this week. This is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. This is the first podcast of mine that you're listening to, I'm going to kind of explain what we're doing here. Basically, we basically tried to narrow down what we thought were the top 64 Arena cards of all time, and we put them into a bracket this will be below. If you want to, I would actually recommend, if you're listening, that you check the link below in the description. There'll actually be a link to the actual bracket itself if you want to follow along if you're listening. So here's how we got to the 64 cards. There's a couple rules that we established. First, no legendary cards, just to kind of narrow the gap a little bit. Also, cards are evaluated based on a couple different factors when we decide who wins. Their initial meta impact, so like how much they impacted the meta in the time period that they first were in the game. Their overall power level is obviously part of it, and then also things like their memorability. So like just how much you remember them, and just like how much they impacted. Like when I think of this meta, I think of this. So it's sort of the same thing as meta impact. Also, cards had to be in the game for at least a month. So things that were nerfed or removed right away don't count. So things like Watch Post or Dragon Ball Poacher, like they wouldn't count. But cards like MCT and stuff do count, and the reason is because they were in the game for a significant period of time, so they still had a chance to kind of make their mark or whatever. Also, pre-nerf versions are always used in the discussion. So like Flame Strike's the 4 damage one, Fiery War Axe is on the list, and that's the two mana, that kind of thing. So that's basically the list. Last week we started with 200 cards. We broke it down to 97. Today me and Kellen rushed and got it down to 64. It's not perfect, but it's fun. And another thing is next week, so in terms of how we're going to do the whole setup, is we're going to get the first round done this week. Isherwood, he's going to fill in for Kellen. Then I don't know exactly the time yet, but sometime on Wednesday, midweek, another podcast is going to go up, which will be the second round. And then on Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, we're actually going to bring on, we had Dreads, ADWCTA, and Merps from the Lightforge decide they will come on, and I'm just really excited to bring them on because of their long history with the game and their analysis and everything. So those three guys are going to come on and we're going to have a 5-person panel. And so the last 3 rounds, which will be basically, 16 cards left, we're going to basically vote all 5 of us, and we'll decide, and then we'll come up with a winner. So it should be really fun. So I'm excited to have them as guests. And honestly, I'm kind of glad it worked out that Isherwood got to come on too, because I wanted to include as many people in this as I could, so this will be really fun. So anyway, that's a lot of information, but let's get into it. So are you excited, Isherwood?
Excited, a little bit nervous. Hopefully I don't ruin it for any of the next guests by eliminating a card that they liked, or saying something that sounds especially dumb. But you got to take some risks.
Yeah. So well, and actually that's a good. Your what you just said is something else I want to bring up very quickly, which is that this is supposed to be fun, and I do understand that a lot of people in Arena are very opinionated, and it's supposed to spark debate and kind of like, be a little bit like, there might be cards on here like, how the heck did this card not get on there? Like I already got to post it. Like, how is Primordial Explorer not on there? And the thing is, you got to understand, getting this list down to 64 cards was painful for me. Like, I love a lot of these cards, and like I just had to let some of them go. I wanted Mark of the Lotus on this list really bad, but I just couldn't quite make it. I mean, I could go through so many cards. So anyway, point being, this is supposed to be something that goes through the history of the game and is fun. Maybe for somebody that never played during these times, you can hear a little bit of the history and stories. I actually, and I will admit that some of the cards on the list don't necessarily deserve to be in the top 64, but they are there because they represent certain metas, time periods in the game. So it is supposed to be kind of a historical thing. So let's just try to have fun with it, and we'll get started. And like I said, if me and Isherwood can't agree, then we can blame Kellen because his votes are here. So we got it. All right, let me bring up the let me bring it up and we'll get going here. All right, the first thing we have on the list is we have Abyssal Enforcer versus Zombie Chow. Now, I think this is really funny because I was always curious what Zombie Chow was going to go up against, because Zombie Chow was like, now, and then here's another thing I've been saying throughout, which is that I didn't play Arena, and actually I'm going to lean on Isherwood a little bit for some of these. I did not play Arena during until like maybe TGT to like Blackrock Mountain time. So like I played with these cards, but I didn't play with them initially, so I might not have like as high of opinion on certain cards. Now, Zombie Chow is one that I know is really good, obviously, in the time period. So, you know, putting it up against Abyssal Enforcer is pretty interesting. So, anyway, let me go over through what the cards are. Zombie Chow is a 1-mana 2/3. The Death Rattle was it gave your opponent 5 health when it died. And then Abyssal Enforcer, 7-mana 6/6 demon that dealt 3 damage to the whole board and ruined a meta. So, that's another one. So, all right, what do you think on this one, Isherwood?
Oh, good cards. I mean, Zombie Chow was good. I remember having a 5 Zombie Chow draft way back in the day.
Yeah.
You know what? I think Zombie Chow deserves to be a second round card, but I think it just had an unfortunate matchup here.
I think that's a great way to say it. I do agree with you.
Yeah. It's good. I think it's going to be better than some of the other cards, but I think Abyssal Enforcer is different. And you know what? I can see people wanting like Zombie Chow. There's going to be like really tempo focused like players, or like maybe like I think I can visualize seeing Zombie Chow. And in fact, probably like for most of these picks, I think there's some interesting thoughts, and I can be an unconventional drafter myself. But for me, Abyssal Enforcer, just that much impact on the board, combination of reach, any card that has something on a stick, and Abyssal Enforcer is often referred to as, you know, Hellfire on a stick, is just
right.
I mean, that's my vote right there. Is okay. I'm going Enforcer.
He's going Enforcer. He's already, yeah. So like, and again, I'll go through like my thought process was it sucks because, you know, one thing is meta impact, right? Zombie Chow definitely had a meta impact because I remember what got me into streaming is, I think I brought this story up last week when we talked about Zombie Chow, was I accidentally queued into Amaz after watching him play some other game mode like Ladder, and he played Arena, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my god, I'm facing Amaz, and I just remember him like really being angry at me because I coined Zombie Chow on turn 1 and just like obliterated him with my Salty Dog, which should never have been able to go face. Anyway, but yeah, so Zombie Chow is just was one of those cards that really had an impact, but like I just, unfortunately, I think the power level maybe could actually be fairly close in terms of if you're going to like go by time. But I just think the meta impact of Abyssal is just so much bigger that, unfortunately, I do think that Zombie Chow just got a really bad first round matchup. I mean, Abyssal Enforcer is one of the most insane meta defining cards of all time. So I think, and that was, that was what Kellen voted for. So whatever I said wouldn't have mattered anyway. So yes, it will be Abyssal Enforcer moving on to round 2. Zombie Chow, it was a nice try, but you didn't quite make it. All right, so next we've got Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron, which was a 10-mana spell that cast 10 random spells. And then we've got Light Bomb, 6 mana, and basically a 6-mana board clear that dealt the attacked damage to all minions. So it was also very good. I know I didn't look at the vote yet, but I know Kellen didn't really understand why I wanted to put Box on here. But I just watched Box just it could screw you. It was possible. Man, it seemed like 95% of the time that card was just like game winning with all the card draw and stuff. So I don't know. It's close. What do you think, Isherwood?
This is a tough one. Like there's Puzzle Box there's so much randomness in it. And this is especially a hard pick because you can't really envision like, oh, if I had these two cards drafted up against each other, what would I look at? Because one's a priest and one's a mage card. They're
Right.
both generally control cards.
Yep.
And there's a little bit of comparison there. So the selling point for Light Bomb is consistency.
Yes.
Light Bomb very consistently does what it does. And I think and then Puzzle Box has the X factor of it can solve problems that were unsolvable. Like it's
Right.
that card. And that's the thing where it's just like, I kind of like, as I think there just might be there's maybe the memer or the streamer bias that just like wants to pull for something like Puzzle Box.
I did really include this one partly for it's just being a really crazy card.
Yeah. It's so I don't like this card.
You don't have to make the decision yet. We can keep talking.
You put me in a difficult position because this is a pick that I look at and I just think like, if I say Puzzle Box right now, people are going to call me stupid.
No, I don't think so, because truthfully, I mean, I don't know what the actual percentages are. I'm not one of those people that runs through the statistics like over and over, like, you know, some people in arena community do, like Tarot or whatever. But like, you know, like this card, like, I mean, I'll be honest, it was more of an issue when you needed to do something and they did, like, it was obviously better to play this when you were behind and they had a board and you wanted to clear it. Because a lot of times what would happen with Puzzle Box was the chances of clearing their board was pretty high with 10 spells. And also, the reason you didn't lose outright was because a lot of times you got value from secrets that would get cast or card draw. Sometimes you would get minions on the board from, like, you know, play like Call of the Wild or something. I don't know. Like, so there was a lot of really crazy stuff that happened, but it was, I really, being honest, I know you remember the better moments more, but I played this card a lot, and like, there's very few moments where it didn't hurt me. You know what I mean?
I remember bad moments from Puzzle Box, but I guess I'm going to go with Puzzle Box, and if it goes through, then I'll let the next group of people cut it down. But I think I'm going to try to put some reasoning behind the meme choice here. Both of these cards you don't want to play unless you're behind, and Light Bomb doesn't solve the big death rattle problems like. I mean, Prototype wasn't around at the time of Puzzle Box, but it doesn't solve the death rattle problems and those particularly bad problems. You can get more of a tempo swing off of Light Bomb by light bombing and playing 4 mana and the later. You can get more consistency. I shouldn't say you should get more tempo because Puzzle Box could do just about anything. So I think it's one of those things where if I'm behind and I've got just the one card, I want that card to be Puzzle Box, rather than Light Bomb. I think with Priest nowadays, Light Bomb is just a fantastic tool. You're going to have the cards generally, but this is a tough one. And you know what? I'm going to say maybe I'm just really wrong and off the wall, but I'm going Puzzle Box.
I do think that with all these picks, it's almost, there's a couple that might be very obvious, but I don't think you can. They're all so good. We're down to 64 that really, I mean, you're going to probably be able to make arguments every single time. I honestly think I got to think about this more. See, the thing was Light Bomb's argument is that it was really the first board clear that like could really just deal with almost at least a lot of boards. Not all of them, obviously. But instead of it being being based on, like, you know, how much damage the board clear did, it was just based on if there were minions there. So it did solve problems that a lot of board clears at the time could not solve. Now, there were other cards later in the game, like Plague and stuff, that could do more than Light Bomb, but at the time it was definitely good. But that being said, I honestly think I'm going to go Puzzle Box because I just
feel...
Go ahead.
When did Light Bomb come out? What expansion?
That was GVG.
it's really early on, and I would say like the priority for arenas in that meta is you're drafting Yetis, you're drafting Boulder Fist Ogres, and that's still generally a priority to try to take the one health over the one attack. I think over 5/4s anyways. So again, not saying that it wasn't good, but like the earlier we go into with Hearthstone, the more vanilla it is, and I feel like Light Bomb is maybe actually like I feel like it's better now because like Priest just can't like. Priest can just go control instead of having like the one or two pieces.
Right.
But yeah, like
I mean, I think what sells me with Puzzle Box is it literally could solve problems that literally just couldn't. There was no other card that could deal that. There was literally no other card that could do it. In some ways, Puzzle Box can do things that no card ever, even before or after, it could do, just because of the fact that it was 10 random spells. And there was obviously, you could have 3 spells in there that were complete whiffs, but it only took one. Sometimes it only took one of those spells being good enough to basically make the card worth it. That's all it took sometimes. So yeah, I like it. Let's see if Kellen agreed with us. I guarantee you he didn't, because he did not understand the Puzzle Box thing. Yeah, he voted Light Bomb. I knew it. Well, he's wrong. So it's on the Puzzle Box is going on to round 2, baby. Let's go.
Where I feel less guilt on this is like, sure, both of these cards are good, but they're not final. Like there's like, oh, maybe I'm like canceling out like one of the ultra best cards. Like, no, these weren't going to be making it to the probably final bracket. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the other
listen, if this card gets to dreads, I mean, things could happen. We'll see. We're just time will tell. All right, so we're gonna move on to our next bracket. This is kind of interesting one. So we have North Sea Kraken versus Mind Control Tech. Now, North Sea Kraken was a 9-mana 9/7 beast that dealt 4 damage. And Mind Control Tech, basically the battle cry was if your opponent had 4 or more minions on the board that you took control of a random one. It was a 3-mana 3/3. So Mind Control Tech has a very I do not think the power level necessarily dictated it be on this list, but it was such a historical card I could not include it on the list for me. And it did eventually get banned. And I do think it was a card that was really good that it got banned. Some people don't agree with that, and I understand. But basically, if you played Hearthstone before the time period where Mind Control Tech got removed from Arena, especially like in the earlier stages of Arena, like you would literally set up a board of like 3 stronger minions, and like even though like tempo wise it would be correct to play like your 2-mana 3/2 or whatever, you would just not play it, because like the only way sometimes that you would lose was if they had that card and people would hold it. And it's just so funny how like a card that really like it shouldn't have been like that crazy of a power spike, but it was meta. It really was a meta-defining thing. So anyway, I'm curious what you think about it, because it's just really great opinions on certain cards.
You're kind of hinting at, you're kind of leading into something, and the question I'm going to ask you makes this pick, like this pick is actually to me incredibly easy, because I'm going to ask you one question that'll very easily determine it.
Oh, okay.
Is this a question of, out of these two, which is the better card? Or which one was the more impactful card on the meta?
Well, it's supposed to be kind of a mix of both. It's hard because it's very subjective. Like the way we're doing this whole thing is very subjective, because we're trying to give lower like cards that had good power level early on a chance against cards that are obviously way better, to just give them an opportunity. But it's hard to say.
So I'm then going to interpret this as which one is the better card. Okay. And in that case, I think, Mind Control Tech was powerful, and it's one of my most hated cards. And I'm generally not a fan of banning stuff, but I'll take a ban on MCT. But yeah, I think very impactful. But the thing is, Mind Control Tech was insanely impactful because of all the times we had to play around it, not because of all the times it got played. In Kraken, if I'm drafting between those two, I'm taking the Kraken. Like I'm taking the more consistent card of these two.
Yeah. No, it's fair points. I mean, the thing is that it's fine. I think there's people that question why this is on the list, and I do get that I didn't expect it to go far. I don't even know. I didn't look at Kellen's vote yet, but One thing I did love about North Sea Kraken, and this is something I want to explain for someone that didn't play with the card in its initial meta, is that it wouldn't necessarily matter now, but at the time, usually it was very common that North Sea Kraken would clear their board, and that it would then mean that the 9 damage was pretty much guaranteed to go face. That was very common. Like they'd have like a 5/4 left, like a taunt or something or whatever. And you would just kind of like with your board and the Kraken, you would just basically remove everything and then just set up for lethal. And even if that didn't work, you could just top deck and go over top of a taunt by just hitting their face. So, and it was a card that you played around constantly. If you were a high level player, you played around this card all the time. So I do think North Sea Kraken I do think this is probably one of the more lopsided brackets that there is. Even though Kraken, I don't think is the highest power level of a card in this whole thing, I did want to include it because of its meta impact. So I would vote Kraken too. And it looks like Kellen did as well. So it's a sweep.
Neutral Reach was rare at the time, I think.
Yes, and this was one thing that I talk about as like history of Hearthstone is like if you look through the cards slowly, you'll notice that as time goes on, they start to give neutral cards more and more abilities that should not exist. Well, I shouldn't say shouldn't exist, but really are class abilities within neutral cards. My example, for instance, Death Speaker is one I always bring up. Main reason being that Death Speaker basically gave Divine Shield to something, and that was really something a Paladin was supposed to do. But once every certain classes there's a reason why they separated abilities and classes, and they started bleeding more and more and more stuff in. And this was one of those cards kind of that started that whole process, or at least very early on. So pretty interesting. So, all right, release the Kraken. It's moving on. All right, so next we've got, this one's pretty interesting. We got Piloted Shredder, which is a 4-mana 4/3 Death Rattle that summoned a 2-drop. And then we've got Silver Sword, which is an 8-mana 3/3 weapon that gave a +1/+1 to your whole board. So this one is really interesting because of the meta impact, in my opinion. Shredder by far was, well, I don't know about during its actual release, because again, I didn't play during GVG, but it was definitely like the best 4-drop, and it was really like the good players knew sometimes to just ignore it and not trade into it. And, but Silver Sword also was really, really good. And for a while when Paladin was good, it definitely had a big impact. So, yeah. What do you think, Ish?
Yeah, this is hard. So I'm cheating a little bit here because I'm looking at this card and I don't remember Silver Sword very much. And I think it's just like, I was like, oh, was Witchwood one of the sets that I took a break on? It's like, oh no, I definitely played during Witchwood. It's just really, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I was looking at these cards, so the memory is a little bit vague, and maybe because Witchwood maybe just didn't have that many memorable cards. Like
they really didn't. They kind of struck out on the echo mechanic,
Yeah, maybe this is just like for impact of the meta when it came out. Like they're both, I feel like Silver Sword probably wasn't showing up, as much as like Shredder was ever showing up. This one's a tough one. So, like, nowadays, if I got offered a Silver Sword or a Shredder, and I know I'm taking a neutral card versus a class card, I'd be taking the Silver Sword.
Correct.
And it's man, memory's foggy, and it's a hard one because, like, Shredder, if we're going when it came out, Shredder was, it was, I think it was the best 4, right? Like,
it was for a pretty long time, even after beyond the set that it came out, which was GVG. It was the best 4 for a while.
It was really defining. I think I've kind of locked myself into a means of at least reasoning through this, and I think for me it's I'm putting less value on the meta defining cards because I feel like in that case there's too much weight that goes into like potentially commons in certain metas, right? Where commons would just maybe beat out on epics. So yeah. I think Silver Sword breaks through for me here. But I don't know. I don't know about this one. I'm unsure. I almost want to say like don't count mine unless it's the. I would prefer to be a tiebreaker here. If
you can be a tiebreaker. Well, let me think about. Yeah, you can sit back for a second. That's okay. It's these are hard, man. These are like, I still I tried really hard to not pre-plan my vote on purpose. I thought about doing that, but then I was like, I feel like my ability to discuss it will not be as good, so I didn't do that. And I also chose to not even look. I didn't even look at Kellen's. I'm not even looking ahead. I'm just waiting until it matters. So Silver Sword, and this is true. Silver Sword, for just the way the sets rotated, was not really in the game as long as a lot of other cards. Like, it's been around. Well, Witchwood is a decent time ago. But the way they did rotations, like once Witchwood rotated, they just didn't really bring that one back for a long time, and it hasn't been back for a while. But its power level was just was one of the strongest weapons ever, because it just, even if you just had 2 minions on board, like the pressure it created was just so immense, and you basically did exactly what Paladin wanted, which it just made everything really sticky.
It was, if you were healthy enough, it was just like, even without minions on the board, being able to develop the turn after and just, use those buffs, especially if you had any sort of. And I think Paladin had a few, sort of split cards even back then, to where it's like, oh, if you throw some 1/1s down, it can be really good.
Yeah. Okay. So what am I voting? This one's so hard for me because, like I said, the reason this is hard is like, in terms of like their power level for the time period, I think it's actually fairly even. Like, I don't think, if you look at the time period they were in the game, I think the power levels were fairly close. So for me, it kind of, I do remember Silver Sword pretty well, as much, and I would say the memorability for Shredder maybe is a little bit higher. But again, I think that's partly because it wasn't in the game. So then I kind of look at the meta impact.
I mean, the meta impact is like, it's a neutral and the best neutral for. So I mean, I kind of want you to go with Shredder here. So
you want me to go with? What about you?
So here's the thing: is I want you to go with Shredder, because you can go with you can pick these cards for different reasons, and this way we get to make sure that Kellen's actually a decider on one of these, because there's a good chance that we're going to be biasing each other, like, especially since we haven't given this a lot of thought beforehand, that whoever talks first gets to bias. And maybe you should go with your thoughts on a few of these first, even.
Okay.
Just so.
Yeah. Sorry. I guess it's just it's because a lot of times I'm doing the host role, so it's just kind of natural. But I do understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. We like it's something that like kind of like subconscious. Like, it's like, as soon as like, oh yeah, that is a good point. That's a good point, especially like that.
I think I actually am going to go Shredder, and the main reason is because of, I just think its impact was just greater overall. And I know it's a neutral card, but even so, I just think it just.
That's fair. I think if the evaluation is by impact, then that is 100% a fair thing. And I think, let's see what Kellen has to say then.
Wait, are you voting yet, or you're going to be the decider?
Oh. I want to hear. I'll go with Silver Sword, so this way that Kellen for sure, at least with one of these picks, gets to be the decider. Then
he's the decider. It's Silver Sword. He said Silver Sword.
All right, and I like valid reasons for both of these. Like, if we're talking about meta impact, for sure Shredder. But I'm right with most of these. I think I'm going to lean definitely towards which card is, I think, just better. So yeah.
All right, so this one I'll try to go first, but this one's going to be pretty short for me. It's just because, well, we'll get there. All right, so next we've got Arbor Up versus Call of the Wild. So Arbor Up is the Druid spell. It's a 5-mana spell that it summons two 2/2 treants, and then it gives the whole board a +2/+1 buff. And then Call of the Wild, oh god, I gotta remember. You can correct me, but I'm almost certain that its initial mana cost was 8, correct?
I think so.
Yeah, because then it went to 9. It was 8. So this is the 8 mana version, but not that it matters a lot because it was still good at 9. But so Call of the Wild was 8 mana spell that summoned all the different Leok, Huffer, and Miosh. So it summoned all 3. And then you could basically, at worst, you got to basically get 5 face damage if they didn't have a taunt. So very good card, very meta defining for Arena. But yeah, it was very, very good. So I think this is pretty easy for me as Arbor Up. As much as Call of the Wild was a great card, it was meta defining. It was one of the best cards for Hunter. Arbor Up's power level, I mean, it's just one of the best buffs that's ever existed. And the main reason for that is simply just because the main reason that its power level was so high was just because there's been very few buffs that actually brought minions on the board with the buff. So even in a worst case scenario, you get a 2/4/3s for 5 mana, which isn't even really bad. It's not the best way you'd obviously want to use it, but yeah, to me this is like a slam dunk Arbor Up, but that's mine. So hopefully that didn't impact you too much. But now it's your turn.
I was given this a little bit of thought before, and so the selling point for Call of the Wild really is what it did for Hunter, which historically for a long time was not a great arena class, and Call of the Wild was just doing so much. So if we're evaluating how much a card helped the class, then you could give Call of the Wild a little bit more. But for me, it's Arbor Up as well. And Call of the Wild gives reach, and again, that's especially valuable in Hunter. But I think if you look at these cards, Arbor Up is a card that rewards board presence, and Call of the Wild did that a little bit because one of the animal companions
gave a plus attack,
plus attack. But the thing with Arbor Up is that these cards, they have similarity, and unlike a lot of our it's not unlike some of our previous discussion points. There's some similarities here, and for me, it's just the cheapness and the flexibility of Arbor Up as 5 mana to be able to combo out earlier with the board, clean up a game. I think I like Arbor Up. I like Arbor Up quite a bit significantly more.
Yeah, and one of the things in difference because you're right, there is a little bit of similarity because they're both kind of they can both be finishing cards. And the thing about Call of the Wild though, and one of the reasons it made the list was because when it was the 8 mana version, basically again, if they did not have a taunt, which is honestly it's a condition, but if they didn't, you could hero power with the spell, and that mattered a lot. 7 reach damage on 10 with a Hunter at the time period was it was one of those cards they play it and you're just well, I mean, what are you going to do? You can't beat it. So no, it did get nerfed, and it did actually, this was one of those nerfs that really actually impacted how good the card was. It still was really strong, but yeah, I mean, it was it's an interesting one. Kellen also went with Arbor Up, so and I'm not surprised. But the fact that if you basically played a Vile Fiend with Arbor Up, and then if you just have a board and you're just you get ahead, once you play the Arbor Up, when you basically lock the game down on 5 a lot of times, and there's just no recovery, and that's just such a strong thing to have where, if you have 1 minion on the board and you play it, a lot of times that's all it takes to win, and that's really early for a card with that kind of power spike in the game. So yeah, I think that's a pretty easy one, though I do think Call of the Wild deserves a little bit of credit there, All right, so next we're going to move on to one of another, man, they're getting on the Druid cards. I do love Druid. Ultimate Infestation versus Evil Miscreant. So Ultimate Infestation was a 10 mana. This was one of the first crazy spells that was expensive that actually worked. 10 mana. Actually, I'm afraid I'm going to say this incorrectly, and I'm probably going to say it in the wrong order. But it dealt 5 damage. It gave you 5 armor. It summoned a 5/5. It drew 5 cards, and that's it, right? Is that?
I think that's the summary of it. Yeah.
Yes. Now again, I probably said it in the wrong order of the card, but that's all it did. So, and then Evil Miscreant was originally a 3 mana 1/5. I don't even really think it matters if we consider the nerf version, but it became a 1/4. But it's a 3 mana 1/5 that, when comboed, would summon 2 lackeys. So this is actually now that I look at this is pretty interesting because Ultimate Infestation, it's really hard for me not to take this card because the impact was so great. It literally gave me one of my best leaderboard finishes ever. And actually it was the meta when Dreads went 9.4 as well. It was the first time in history, I've talked about this before, where I had a I think my average was 8.4 or 8.5. I don't remember. But I had a very set rule. People said I was crazy. People on stream were Keldar, you're nuts. Like, what are you doing? Like, stop doing this. But it worked for me, which was, my rule was simple. If I had one Ultimate Infestation in my deck, I always kept it, no matter what my rest of my hand was. If it was the only one, I kept it. Now, if I had two or more, I always tossed it. I never kept it. But if I only had one, I always kept it, and it worked for me. I mean, and it's because its ability to come back was just so insane. You could fall so far behind and still it would like win the game. But at that time period, there wasn't nearly as much ability to create cards or, so the card advantage was so impactful during that period.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why it's on the list, is because at that period of time, card advantage doesn't really have as much impact now. It still matters, but it's the ability for an opponent to go from 2 cards back up to 9 is like so easy. If you guys, I'm sure, has seen Ysera's and Onyx Mage Scribes, like people can just like pump out cards like nothing. So nowadays, like this card really would be kind of bad. Or not, I shouldn't say bad, but it just wouldn't really be as nearly as good. But Miscreant, man, that there was a whole meta, and I'm not sure if this one of the metas you took off, Ish. I feel like it might have been.
I've played a lot with Miscreants, but that's when they came back. I think I was around for the initial Miscreant. I think I was around for the initial Lackey meta.
It was so bad. I'm going to tell you one story about Miscreant. I remember on stream that I got 2 Miscreants early on, and I said, I'm going to draft the most meme deck I possibly can, and I'm still going to go 12. And I like guaranteed it. I forget what I think I offered like subs if I didn't get it, because I was so confident. And like I drafted like the greatest, or the escape card, the one that brought all the cards back to your hand. I drafted all this BS, and it just didn't matter because I just threw lackeys down and got more cards and kept getting more cards. And like this one's actually really they both kind of do similar things. They just create tons of value. Yeah. So anyway, that's my takes on the card. I don't know if I'm going to vote, but I think I'm going to have to go UI, but I think it has, I don't know. It's close.
I think I lean towards UI, but I think this is actually, I think this card, it matters extremely considering the nerf on Miscreant. The power of Miscreant with the 1/5 versus a 1/4 did 2 things. It really did one thing. It's about the stability of having that something on the board to follow up, which meant that you had a rush target, that just the +1 attack, right? Really, you had that, and you had much more consistency to be able to evolve it. And that was, I think it being a 1/5 was so huge because coining out a 1/4 and a 1/5, I think, does really matter for that stability and the early game. I think I like the Ultimate Infestation. I think it had I seem to remember it having more of a greater impact, and like again at that time Ultimate Infestation was doing something I just felt particularly unique that was so overwhelming. And Miscreant has a little bit more like there. I've played plenty of games with Miscreant where, you hit the double rush and it just doesn't do anything. And maybe this was more recent, and Miscreant's power is probably where it was going down a bit. But yeah, I'd say, I can see somebody going for Miscreant with the initial 1/5. I think that does matter a lot, but I go for UI here.
I will say that, like, just for people listening to understand, like, just because I pick Ultimate Infestation, like I could say that this is like a 51-49. Like this is really, really, really close for me because they both had massive meta impacts. They both had massive power spikes when they came down. Their value generation was insane. They just kind of all did the same thing, but Ultimate Infestation was just, it was kind of a unicorn. There was never a spell that was 10 mana that actually was worth it. Like that didn't destroy you as an arena player, like because you had a 10 mana card in your deck. Like before this card, like you didn't even really want any 10 mana card in your deck ever, or I'm not sure, maybe I'm not missing one, but I just don't think there was really many before it. So I'm going to go Ultimate Infestation. So that'll put it through. But let's see what Kellen said just for fun. He did put Ultimate Infestation. This is one of those picks that I could see afterwards getting a lot of flack for not putting Miscreant through. Honestly, I really could, because this one is just, it's really good. All right, so now we're gonna move on. Actually, well, I didn't even see this one. I tried not to look at all these, like I said.
It's a tough one.
This one's really interesting. Again, this is another bracket where the cards are kind of similar in what they do to some degree. It's very interesting. Yes. And we'll explain here. So Claw Machine is a 6-mana 6/3. It's Claw Machine versus Firelands Portal. So Claw Machine is a 6-mana 6/3 rush, death rattle, draw a card and give that card a +3/+3 buff. If you've been playing Arena at all recently, I'm sure you've seen a ton of these. And the other card is the good old faithful Firelands Portal, which was definitely a meta definer. This was a mage spell, 7-mana spell that dealt 5 damage and summoned a 5-mana minion. I'm not sure on this one. This one,
I think.
Holy crap.
I think right now. So I think this actually. I think if these two cards were offered to me, I think I would take Firelands Portal right now in the current meta. And I think Firelands Portal was like the thing with Firelands Portal was Claw Machine is really good.
Right.
But if your opponent has a 3/3 on the board, it's clunky, right? You're spending so much for development on the next turn. Firelands Portal could just be like, you could always just play it to the dome. Like,
yeah.
And it's just, it was meta defining. I'm not sure. Maybe I'd be wrong. Maybe like if Firelands Portal was in the meta right now, like I'd be like, maybe I would pick it and be like, oh no, Claw Machine was bad. But like intuitively, Firelands Portal just felt like an overwhelming, just dominant force in that meta. This might be just me with like
but that's okay though, because that's part of what is supposed to, like, this isn't a perfect science. Like, we don't have like, that it's 50% meta impact and 10% this. But the thing is when you look at cards and, we have all these top players evaluating these, the meta impact matters. And I would argue that it's got to be one of the top, I could be wrong here, but I feel like Portal could honestly be in the top 5 of the greatest impact cards just for a meta impact ever,
What about this question, right? Like, if you're doing a draft right now and it's Firelands Portal versus Claw Machine, which one would you pick? You don't have to agree with me, but like,
no, I would take the Firelands.
Right?
It would, and the thing is, and it's hard when I don't necessarily want to make picks based on what I would take because it is true that sometimes as a good player, you'll take the class card just because it's a class card and might see the neutral card again. And it does something different. But at the same time, that is a good point because the thing is, Portal can go face, and I don't care what it is, but that matters. That gets me an extra 5% there.
I think it's relevant here because Claw Machine's brand spanking new.
Right.
The fact that it's even a consideration for a card as old as Firelands Portal, like, that's just, if it's a card you would pick now, then definitely if we're evaluating it at the time of when it came out, because like a card that old's got to be better back then than it's now, I think. So yeah, I think the development on the board, it's Portal for me.
Okay, that's fair. And here's the thing, like, I like to give this. I mean, by the way, if you have a story about a card, please share one. Like, I just like to do it because this is why I did this. I did this because I wanted to like take people through the history of the game. Like, I know that we're trying to get the best card, but like, again, I just want to, some of these cards made the list because of simply their history. Now this one, I think I said all along that if I'm evaluating it based on meta impact and power level at the time, that this card could be in the top 5 or top 10 or even top 5. Like, it just,
Firelands Portal was probably one of the first cards that got people to uninstall by itself.
Well, yeah, and the thing is remember, guys, this is a period where there's no micro adjustments, and frankly, this is maybe when they started to think about micro adjustments, because the thing is you could draft 6 of these 7 mana spells in your deck, and it wouldn't matter. Like, it didn't matter. You could draft
Karazhan.
Oh man, and the thing,
Karazhan might be like one of the most hated metas, particularly because of Firelands.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing was, I feel like, at least for me as a player, and I think I was infinite at this point. I'm trying to remember when I became truly an infinite player or whatever, but I will say that I just remember it being the first meta where, the cards came out and people started playing. You start, you're trying different classes and you're doing your things. And all of a sudden, like maybe like 2 weeks like after the meta started, every matchup was mage. Like I just remember, that was the first experience I had where like it became like everybody knew about, oh guys, Firelands Portal. Like you just take mage every time. And that and it just was like overwhelming. And you just were like, you would just play games and like I just remember a run where it was like 8 straight mages. And I'm just like, God, just kill me. Like, but I wanted to mention that there was one game that I did win, by the way, where and I remember I friended this guy and we still talk. Like it was just one of those games where you just have a friend because it was just so crazy. Basically, I don't remember exactly the cards, but I played Firelands Portal on his like 4 or 5 drop, and he Fireland Portal, and then basically the 5 drop that I got, he Firelands Portal that one, and then the 5 drop that he got, I did it to his. We did it back and forth on the 5 drops we summoned 6 times in a row, and nothing else was on the board. And like by the end of it, I was laughing so hard, like I didn't even care if I won anymore. It was just so funny to me. But anyway, so yeah, I'm going Firelands Portal. Its impact is so great. And it's funny because I look at certain cards, I'm like, man, I wonder if it can make it to the end, Let's see what Kellen, I'm sure he voted Portal. He did. And it's, I think it's cool because it is actually up against a really strong card and a pretty meta impacting card too. So this took out Claw Machine. That's pretty impressive, honestly. Okay, so this next pick, oh yeah, this is one we talked about before the podcast a little bit.
Yes.
So this is we have Implosion, which was a 4-mana Warlock spell that dealt 2 to 4 damage, and you summoned the amount of 1/1 imps based on the amount of damage you did. So if you dealt 2 damage, you summoned 2 imps. If you dealt 4 damage, if you were me, the card really read 4 damage, 4 mana always deal 2 damage to. And I remember I had this discussion the first time I co-op with Shady Bunny, and it was like the first time I ever was able to cast it, and it did 4, and I was so excited. But I just always low rolled this card, so I hated this card. And I still kind of do. Like I have this like bias against it. I also just don't like cards that do random damage like this. But and then the other card is Muster for Battle. Got to be one of the craziest meta impacting cards ever. It was a 3-mana spell for Paladin that summoned 3 1/1 Silverhand recruits and also gave you one of my favorite weapons of all time. It gave you a Light's Justice. So that in itself was crazy to me. I remember it was the one I did play during this meta. I remember looking at this card and being like, okay, did you ever, Isherwood, like Light's Justice, one of those cards as a very new Arena player that I was like, why do people hate this card? This card is so good. It was like one of those cards that I felt like I discovered on my own was like good, And then I saw this card and I was like, oh my God, like it's Light's Justice and I get 3 1/1s. This card is unstoppable. It was pretty great. So
yeah.
I think this one's kind of lopsided, frankly, which is very rare in this, but
yeah. I mean, my opinion is that Implosion is the only. I think looking through the rest of the cards, like I'm not sure if I'm missing anything. Implosion to me is the only bad card on this. I think Implosion is maybe when it came out, maybe then, but to me it feels like so often you can't Implosion. Like so often you can't risk the Implosion because if it does 2. It's just losing the game. And if you've got if any of our cards here is, if I play this card and it's a 1 in 3 where I lose the game, that's Muster for Battle was like, I play this on 3 and I win 80% of my games, just from this card. So Muster for Battle, like I would go on more about Muster for Battle, but I think I dislike Implosions enough, and Muster for Battle, it's just like, no need, Muster. Bam. That's it.
We have a lot of cards to go through, so I'm not going to go crazy on this one, but I do think this is Muster. Let me see what Kellen wrote. He did say Muster. This is definitely one of those cards based on its impact on the game. I don't know if it'll go to the end, but I could definitely see it going a few rounds.
I will say that out of most of these picks, if you go either way, whoever you are, like I can see it. If you go Implosion here, let me come to my channel and let me know what.
So you can tell him how wrong he is.
No, I just want to know, because that is like they're out there discovering 10th planets or something. Like that is I'm curious. I'm curious as to what's going on there.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, looking ahead a little bit, I this is the first time I'm going to actually throw this out there, but you guys can't really see this if you're watching on YouTube or watching the visuals, but next round, it's going to be Firelands Portal versus Muster for Battle. That's going to be tough. That's a tough one. So we won't talk about it now, but that's going to be cool. All right, so moving on, we've got Bogspine Knuckles versus Og Merchants. And this is like one of the ones we lumped all the Og Merchants together because they kind of all did the same thing, and I think it's just good to like represent them. So I did put them as a group. Bogspine Knuckles. Actually, I'll be honest, I don't play this card very often, so I don't remember the original. It was a 5. I think it was originally a 4. So it was a 5-mana 4/2 weapon, and then it crap. I actually forget how much it evolves your board by. Do you know?
1.
Just by 1. Okay, so you would swing the weapon and it would evolve your whole board by 1. Og Merchants, there's actually 3 of them. They're all 1-mana 2/1 cards that ping a minion as their battle cry. One of them gives a Divine Shield. One of them gives gives the minion rush, and the other one gives it spell damage. So for me, I definitely lost to Bogspine Knuckles a lot. I've seen it happen. But and again, I'm not the best shaman player. It's probably my worst class in general. But I just have so much. Actually, we just did an episode called "The Power of Ping" recently. You guys can check that out if you little mini plug here. You can check that out if you want. And we talked a lot about Og Merchants and what makes them so good and why Ping is so important. And I'm going to represent Ping here. I'm going to go with the Og Merchants. I just think that they are so insane. Like, decks where I've had like 3 Og Merchants are just the win rates are just insane. So what do you think here, Isherwood?
It's a little bit tough. I think just going off Guardian Og, I think that that card, like, I probably wouldn't take a Guardian Og necessarily over a Bogspine, because Bogspine's uniqueness, but Guardian Og, especially like the day it came out, I think, with Bone Chewer. Is it Bone Chewer? Is it Brawler's the 2/3? I think
Brawler's the 2/3, and Vanguard is the big one, 7-mana 4/10.
I think they came out and were getting offered with each other enough that like Bone Chewer, Brawler, and then into Guardian Og was just, it's a combo. So it's kind of hard because Ogs are just pings, but like impact wise, neutral pings are huge. It's kind of hard. Like, I normally would say like, oh, like with these picks, like, oh, I want to go with the more powerful of the cards. And Bogspine, I feel like, has in general greater maximizing potential, and I'd probably pick it over an Og. But I kind of like want to lean towards like it's grouping all 3 Ogs together. That's pretty substantial.
Supposed to try to make it more enticing, like.
Yeah, I like this.
They're a package deal,
I'm not being entirely consistent, because I think right now the thing is like I guess where I'm not being consistent, I would take a Bogspine Knuckles over an Og, but I more so would be doing that because it's fun. I'm not even sure if it'd necessarily be better than a Guardian Og on average. So like, oh yeah, sure, I draft Bogspine over an Og, but is that even right? Well, right now with Selfless Hero, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'll throw it to Ogs, I guess. It's kind of a.
Yeah. Well, again, I think there's going to be things where, like, even when Dreads or the Grid and Go come on, they might be shocked that certain cards made it through. But, like, again, a lot of this is so subjective. Like, you have certain cards you just like. Oh. Can we
have actually with this one, can we have Kellenable be a decider again? Like, can we can I be the second vote if needed?
Well, do you want to vote for Bogspine so you don't have to decide?
Well,
you can do whatever you want. You're going
Ogs, right?
Oh yeah, I'm going Ogs.
You know what? I will I'm going to say I initially go with Oggs, but I'm going to give Kellen Abel the deciding vote. I'll flip flop.
Oh, he's flipping. He's flipping, chat.
If Kellen Abel goes the other way, that's
what
I'll do. I don't want to be blamed for this pick.
I know it feels it. I have to be honest. I felt a little pressure doing this at first. Again, when I started seeing the feedback from the Reddit post, got actually like 58 comments, which if you guys know on Arena HS is actually a lot of comments, like a lot. So Kellen went with Og Merchants. So I guess Og Merchants are going through.
And I thought I was going to go the other way. Okay, good. Justification. I like it.
I really like this one. Again, this is I do think that power level wise, I don't know if you can even say though that the power level is different because the impact is so great. And I think ping is something that, like, I can't tell you how many times, honestly, like with Og Merchants, I will say that I think that I use them more for ping removal than actually the value of what the card does. Honestly, I think I use the card more for removal than I do for actually like giving it a shield or giving, whatever. But the fact is that even if the one time where you get the shield on like a Colossus or something and like it just blows the game out, it's really great to have such a flexible small card that can have such a big impact. So I don't think it's wrong. So yep, Og Merchants is moving on. All right, so next we've got Primordial Drake versus Rap Golem. Primordial Drake was during Ungoro. It was an 8-mana 4/8 taunt that dealt 2 damage to the entire board. This is the first card of its time, I think, that did something like that. I guess it was before. Was it before Abyssal? Actually, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think so. I think it was before Twin Tyrant as well.
And then we have Rap Golem, which was one of the few cards from that set that actually made it in here, I think. It's a 7-mana 7/5 reborn card that summoned a 1/1. So you would have to deal 5 damage
1/1 taunt, right?
1/1. Sorry. Yes, that's very important. 7-mana 7/5 reborn that summoned a 1/1 taunt. So both were very meta impacting.
I'll lead. I'll take the gamble of being
okay.
wrong in the eyes.
I've been leading a couple times. Okay.
Intuitively, it felt like Drake was more impactful.
Okay. Yeah, I really do think that. And again, there might be people that didn't play during this time. But the amount of times, again, remember, card advantage was so much more important. Like I can't even express. Card advantage was so big during this period of time when Primordial Drake was out. And if you would clear their board and then they would either just not be able to get through that taunt because they only had like one thing left or they just didn't have any cards left, like the game ended. Like it was just, there was no recovery. Rap Golem was difficult, but it was a card that you could kind of deal with it being on the board for a little bit and then kind of like you would sometimes problem solve over like 2 or 3 turns, which is something I really liked about the card. Like sometimes you knew you couldn't deal with it, but you like spread out a little bit and then like, whatever. I'm gonna go with Prime Drake. This is one of those cards that I think was just a powerhouse for like maybe not on the level of like a Firelands Portal for like impact, but it was really, really impactful. So I'm gonna go with the Drake. Kellen also went with Drake, so that was a sweep. Primordial Drake is moving on to round 2. All right, so the next one we have on our list here, we have I think this is the only spell burst if I'm not mistaken. We have Firebrand, which is a mage 3-mana 3/4 spell burst that dealt 4 damage to random damage to like enemy minions. Oh, I remember when this card, and then Sword Eater, is a 4-mana 2/5 taunt for warrior that summoned a fiery war axe. Good lord. I remember when I saw Firebrand, because I was thinking like, did they really print this card? Like, this has happened a lot, obviously, but I was just like, does it really have to hit? Like, if this card could at least go face, it would give it a little bit of like semi-balance. But the fact that it targets minions only makes this so crazy. But at the same time, Sword Eater is like maybe one of the strongest taunts / weapon type cards like ever created. It's just so crazy. My initial thought here is that I'll go with Sword Eater, but because I do think it has a bigger impact and is probably a stronger card, but it's really close. And Firebrand is insane. So
Firebrand could have been a second round or third round card, but yeah, I like it's it costs one. Sword Eater costs one more and has like 1 damage less of initial impact, but overall, like adding the fact that it's a taunt, it has 2 swings of the weapon, and on top of that, there is no condition for it. I mean, I think Sword Eater wins out here.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so next we've got Skull of Gul'dan against Outrider's Axe. 2 really strong cards. This is the first, I believe this is the first Demon Hunter card on the list. I did want to try to represent Demon Hunter a little bit. They do have a lot of really strong cards, obviously, as we all know. This is Skull of Gul'dan at 5 mana, by the way. So this is now 6 mana.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it wasn't. Or was it nerfed? How fast was it nerfed? I don't remember.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I actually played when. I think I was just coming back when Demon Hunter came out.
Yep.
And I was not playing it a lot.
Yeah. So anyway, Skull of Gul'dan is a well, at the time it was a 5. It's now 6 mana, but it's a spell. When it is outcast, it draws 3 cards, but when it's outcast, those cards are all reduced by 3 mana. Such a crazy card. And then Outrider's Axe is maybe one of the strongest weapons ever made. In my opinion, it's really good. It's a 4 mana warrior weapon that is a 3 attack, 3 durability. Every time it kills a minion, it summons a card from your deck. So it's really good. Yeah, this is actually really hard. They both draw cards. They both had a meta impact. Okay, go ahead. I'll let you go.
I think like this is a tough one because I don't think I was as involved around the time that Skull came out. I don't remember it being 5. So a part of the problem of that is when Demon Hunter was initially released, it was such a busted class that when you look at a draw card like this, it was that Skull is good if it just grabs you like 3 drops, just cards, right? But the fact that at the time it was pulling Demon Hunter cards that were just busted is kind of like it's hard to evaluate for me. Like right now, I think between these two, if I was offered them in a draft, I think I would want Outrider's Axe. I think the impact on curve is so substantial, and I've had Skull is really good, but it feels to me like Skull sometimes is a little bit more clunky to get use out of than Axe, and Axe can be more clunky to get use out of than Skull at times. So like right now, I think if they're up in a world against each other, I would be up like going for Axe, but I almost want to kind of take a step aside with this one because I feel like initial Skull might have just been like ultra busted given like the meta that it came out on and how good the rest of Demon Hunter cards were. But I'll go with Axe, I guess.
Okay. I'll do like a random thing which I haven't done yet, and I'll let Kellen's pick be next just so I can see if I get to be a decider for once because I don't know. But I will tell you my honest opinion afterwards. He actually went with Axe. Darn it, I was hoping it was going to be he was going to go for Skull. But I was going to go with Axe.
That feels a lot like that makes like the pressure is so much more off, right? When the third person, like when it's like either.
Well, that's why I really was hoping Kellen's, he had like 15% battery. And I'm like, can you send me your votes real fast or something? Because that way, if I brought someone on, it was, we were initially just going to decide the 2 of us, but now thinking about it, there's a lot of ones that he voted for that I didn't necessarily agree with, so it could have been really hard. So anyway, I'm kind of glad that we have 3 parties. I might even end up bringing on you or someone else for the second round in the middle of the week to try to not to have a deciding vote here. But it's going to be Axe moving on to the second round. I think it's pretty good.
You know what'd be great is I wouldn't mind being like if it's just like you and Kellen just being the split, like being instead of being Kellen being the tiebreaker. I wouldn't mind just sitting in the background being a tiebreaker.
Oh yeah, because we'll fight it out. Me and Kellen always disagree, so that could work. All right, so next we've got, oh man, these are 2 crazy ones. Unstable Evolution, which was a 1 mana Actually, I guess it technically wasn't an Echo, but it was basically the same thing. It was a 1-mana spell for Shaman that basically evolved a card up 1 mana cost and then put another copy of it in your hand so you could continue to do as much mana as you had. This card was just so crazy. And then we got Coilfang Warlord, which was...
Oh yeah, finish.
Sorry, I just every time. Listen, I'm sorry, chat. I'm trying to be like a professional
take your time,
here.
Get through it. I know.
No, but every single time that I have to like literally say what this card's stats and everything it does, it makes me like kind of get sick. Anyway, it's 8 mana, 9/5 rush, with a death rattle, summon a 5/9 taunt. I still to this day will remember randomly a couple months ago or whatever, Shady Bunny tried Arena again. Before just leaving again, but he did try it for a little while. And I just remember he'd never seen this card. He didn't play during that period or whatever. And he just like saw it and he's like, what is this? It was the first time I ever saw him like completely like silent, like not sure what to say. Right. So yeah.
You were looking for stories, and
sure. Please,
I will tell a little story.
Sure,
not too long ago, actually. I think about 3 or 4 days ago. I had an unstable evolution, and now I'm gonna quiz people because this is a card that most people don't draft. But are you familiar with a card called Arcane Devourer?
Yes. Oh yeah, that's the one. That's the 8 mana. I think it's
8 mana 4/8.
It's 4/8. I couldn't remember the new stats, and then every time. Holy shit, dude!
Yeah, every time you play a spell,
crap.
It goes +2/+2. Guess who got a 26/30 in Arena just recently?
You need to take a shower, Isherwood. Holy shit!
It was amazing. And with that being said, it's gotta be Coilfang Warlord anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is one of those ones. This is actually tough because Unstable was definitely it was one of those cards that just like when your opponent had it, if they were a good enough player that they could, or they just had the ability to wait till they could like cast it at least 6 or 7 times or whatever. Sometimes you would tempo it early and it would be correct to like just do 2 quick whatevers, and some people were not willing to do that and they would lose because of that. But for when you could actually like do it a million times, or when you would summon like a Sorcerer's Apprentice during like the wild events and then you could cast it endlessly and, you know, test your APM, it was just a really great card. But that all being said, I'm going to take... Yeah.
Sometimes when you evolve to 8 mana with Unstable Evolution, it doesn't give you Coilfang Warlord, so therefore Coilfang Warlord is better.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm going to give it to Coilfang because frankly, Coilfang is just literally one of the strongest cards ever made. And it's one of those frustrating cards. I always say this. It's a card is as strong as it is, it will never see play on ladder ever. And so like it's one of those frustrating cards they designed because I feel like if you're a semi-smart designer, like you'd know that this just wouldn't really, the way the ladder is,
it was a bad for Arena card, right? There's a like so
yeah.
Even like so Venomous Scorpid right now is like it gets played and constructed, but like there are cards that just like don't get played and constructed, and the fact that they exist was so bad. Like why even print what's the banned dragon in Arena right now? Like
yeah.
Why even print that? It's not a 9 mana.
Oh, the Blackwing. Yeah.
Yeah, Blackwing. It's like why even print that card if you're not going to make it good enough for constructed and you're going to ban it in Arena? What's the point?
Yeah, exactly. And this is a card that should have kind of fallen into that category where
if we're banning cards, this should have been banned. This is why like either like ban more things or don't ban things and just to reduce their offering rates. Like I'm like if this card exists, why does Blackwing banned? Honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. The only other card that there's actually very few cards that I agreed with the bans. Since you brought it up, I'm going to bring up. There's like 3. I agreed with, even though MCT's power level was not crazy high, I agreed with it because it was so unfun for Arena and it was so stressful and annoying to have to play around it when it didn't matter, and it just was it was just frustrating that it existed. The other card that I agreed with was poacher because there were just so many dragons, and that card would have just like destroyed Arena forever. So that was one of the fastest bans that I ever saw, where they responded. But anyway, so that's a call. But let's see what Kellen said. Where is it? Oh, he actually voted for unstable, which I definitely. I'm not sure if I can agree with him just because the power level coil thing was just like it's just so immense, but I understand at the same time because all these cards are so good. Next we've got oh wow, this one's really hard for me.
That's a tough one.
Next we've got Bone Mare. Now remember pre-nerf version, so 7 mana, and then it would give a minion +4. Well, it was a 5/5. It was a 7 mana
and give a minion +4/4.
Yes, it was a 7 mana 5/5, and it would give a minion +4/+4 and taunt. So it eventually became 8 mana. It was actually a good enough I was amazed that this card was good enough in ladder that it actually got nerfed. But yep, that was what that card was. And then we have Stonehill Defender. This was one of my favorite inclusions in the 64 because this card was like, it was a little bit more impactful in Paladin, but it was a 3 mana 1/4, and it was Discover a Taunt. It was kind of one of those first Discover cards that just really had a crazy impact. But that being said, Bone Mare was just like, you had to play around Bone Mare so much. Like, you couldn't let them have a board on turn 7. It definitely got a lot less impactful when it got nerfed, but it was a 7 mana card for quite a while. And it was just, there was this meta during that period where, like, if you let your opponent had a board, Fungalmancer was around. So, like, it was basically, you would Fungalmancer and Bone Mare, and it was just like, you just could not, you could just not deal with it. And then with, like, Defender, like with Paladin, they could discover, like, Tarim and, Tyrion, and they could discover, what's the other one? There was a couple other ones. They had, like, the Grimstreak Protector. They just had so many great taunts that were just, like, just game over type of cards.
If Stonehill Defender was set as a Paladin class card, then I think it would have pulled me towards it. But I think because I'm thinking of Stonehill Defender across all, and again, it didn't become bad in the other classes. It was just felt so much more impactful in Paladin. I would have gone there if it was just like, with a little asterisk, only in Paladins. But no, I think I like Bone Mare.
Okay. I'm actually really torn on this one. This is actually one of the ones I'm not as sure on.
You can always disagree with me. We can make things interesting just for the sake of it.
Bone Mare was just so fucking insane. Oh shoot! I was not supposed to drop the F-bombs till the end. I ruined it. It's okay. It's fine. I can bleep it. I'll bleep it. It's some more bleeping to do. That's fine. That's what I'm used to it by now. It didn't feel as good if it was outside of Paladin, but there was just not a lot of cards. Like, it was just one of those things where they would play him, and at that time, remember, you could just discover another defender.
You could just go defender.
You could just keep going until you got the one you wanted, which was really crazy. I actually have no clue. I'm gonna let Kel. What did you vote? Bone Mare?
I did Bone Mare.
I think I'm gonna vote Defender just because I want Kellen to decide.
Yeah.
It's like he's the ghost decider. All right, he actually voted for Defender. All right, so
Interesting. Okay, this is good. This is I think this might be the first one that I wanted that didn't go through.
Yeah. I mean, Bone Mare was really impactful, but it's I don't know. It's hard to say. All right, moving on. We're definitely going to get a lot of these wrong, I'm sure. So Fiery War Axe was again, this is the pre-nerf version, 2 mana 3/2 weapon for warrior. And then we have Illidari Inquisitor, which was an 8 mana 8/8 demon for demon hunter that has rush. And what is the wording so that it attacks whatever it basically attacks whatever you would.
Yeah, it attacks whatever your hero attacks. So
it attacks whatever your hero attacks again. So this is basically a little mini pyroblast on steroids. So
yeah, with the ability to just go through a sizable.
So this is a pretty easy pick for me. Now listen, I understand. I did not play a lot of warrior until more recent, or at least until I got to become a better player. I do think War Axe on 2 was just like, it was literally, it was really the only weapon that was 3 attack. It was very common for there to be 3 mana 3 attack weapons which is eventually what this card did become. But there was just not 3 attack, 2 durability weapons on 2 at all. There was a couple that were like, 2/2s that could become better if certain conditions were met, but there was never any that just like did that alone. So this one was really good. But Inquisitor is just one of those cards that like its power level is just like, how is this in Arena? So I'm gonna go with Inquisitor, but I'm gonna let you go next.
It's tough. So like Warax was, and there's no always pick cards in Arena, but like Warax was at 2 mana was close. It was, and it's a thing where it's just like I'm thinking like it was really good, but like it's hard to say because Warrior was so bad. Like, am I thinking of the impact of this card too greatly? It's, it, I guess I'm trying to think of it a way as like, what percentage of the time do I take both? Like what percentage of the time when Warax was out would I take Warax, which is like 98% of the time. And then how much of the time would I take Illidari Inquisitor? And is it 98 or is it 99 or is it 97? Like, is it like, so Illidari Inquisitor it's doing essentially like, it's kind of like it's like doing the best job at what a lot of other Demon Hunter cards already do. Right? So it's like, yeah, of course it deserves to be on this list because it's the best of what it does. Fiery Warax was the saving grace of like your warrior runs could maybe do something if you had this card.
Okay.
But
I like that point. That's interesting. I didn't think about it that way.
But also the thing is this like your warrior could maybe do something, and I'm not sure if Warax was like I'm trying to remember if like Warax was actually like how many would you actually need to be like, oh, like if I've got like 2 or 3 Waraxes, like I can just take this warrior a long way. I feel like Warax was maybe a card that if I get them, then I can maybe go infinite. Inquisitor is like feels like it's pushing, like that's the cards just like, oh, I've got the good cards, and Inquisitor is just like that card that's going to take me to the next level. This is hard. This is hard to really evaluate for a card that is so old and historical as Fiery Warax at 2 mana versus Illidari Inquisitor. I know what I promise I know what I'm thinking, but can I hear Kellen's Kellen's vote first?
You promise it's not going to impact you? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not. It's not.
It's okay.
I've got it.
I have to be honest with you, though. I have to be honest. Now, again, this is one of those things where I didn't play a lot of Warriors, so it's kind of hard for me to like really grasp the real impact and the real power. I know the power level, I guess, because there just isn't another weapon that's 2 mana that does what this card does, right? Like if this was in Hunter, you'd just be like, holy shit, So now that like what you're saying about how it like maybe it actually gave Warriors at that time period, that was a way they could actually compete when they just really had no other. Their cards were terrible for the first like 5 or 6 expansions of Hearthstone. The Warrior cards, class cards in the sets were just so bad. Like you had like Ogre Warmaul and all these cards that were just so trash, and you still get trash cards. Now I'm kind of leaning Warax, but I'll stick with my vote. But
I'll you know what? If you want to, I'll let you choose. I've got my vote locked in. I want to hear what Kellen says. And
okay, he says Fiery Warax.
So I was going to go Illidari Inquisitor. Do you want to change your vote?
I don't know. You made me think. It's funny. You flip me. I was going Inquisitor, and then like I started thinking about it, and I'm like, again, this is one of those things where I just didn't have the experience during that time period to really, but I kind of got the experience from you talking about it. Oh man,
it's a tough thing because like I think like there's so much other better things in there's so many like not better things in Inquisitor and Demon Hunter. There's so many good things in Demon Hunter that is just like it's like, oh, like is this a measurement of impact of the meta? Because I feel like if Inquisitor went away and you still had the other Demon Hunter stuff that kind of like refilled it, like it wouldn't be lost. You really couldn't take Fiery Warax away from Warrior back then. Like it just like it was the card. Like that was your definer. You really kind of needed that.
It's so funny how some of these picks throw you through such a mind warp, because it's just like, this is one of those ones that's so hard because their initial metas are so far apart, and the power level between this time and this time is just like so massive. I'm gonna go with War Axe. I'll switch it. I don't know.
This is interesting. This is good because I kind of, for the sake of I hope War Axe survives to win ADWCTA is in for the discussion, because he was a warrior enthusiast for when Warrior when Warrior was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
He he wanted to make Warrior great again. And I was back then, I was a Priest enthusiast.
Yeah.
It was just it was a thing. I'm really interested to hear what his perspective was, or maybe he would completely disagree. But it'll be nice to see what War Axe goes up against.
So what are you taking now?
Oh, I mean, you and wait, I said Inquisitor, and
that's right, because we both took it, so it is going to be War Axe, right? Right.
You guys took the War Axe, but
okay.
I
actually feel like we made it with them. I'm having anxiety that I made a mistake, and then I'm going to get people are going to they're going to yell at me. Oh my god, it's crazy. Okay. Moving on. So we got Faceless Corruptor up against Meteor. Faceless Corruptor was a neutral card. It's a 5 mana. Initially, it was a 5 mana 5/4 that you would select a minion. It would make a copy of itself. So you basically get 2 5/4 rushes as long as you had a minion down. And then Meteor was 6. The first one, I remember one of the first spells, I was like, what is this? 6 mana mage spell that dealt it's 15 damage to the minion, and then 3 damage to the either side of it. Yeah, wow. So I used to always compare Meteor. I remember I kept making all these memes because I was streaming at this time, where I'd put Explosive Shot next to Meteor, and I'm like, look at this, for 1 more mana you can deal another 12 damage, just for 1 mana, not power creep. I was so mad because I liked Explosive Shot, or I like that card.
Yeah.
So but Faceless Corruptor was one of those cards. It got nerfed for a reason. Its impact was just it was one of those cards that even when it got nerfed to as a 4, it eventually became a 4/4. But even as a 4/4, it still was just crazy impactful. And in classes like Paladin or Druid or Shaman, where there was tokens and stuff, it just was so good. You were able to just so many cool ways you could use it. As much as I think Meteor was just really good, I just think there's a lot of. I'm honestly a little surprised Meteor made the list. I'm not gonna lie. I think it was really good, but I think Faceless Corruptor is significantly better in my opinion. That's just me. So I'm gonna go with Corruptor. But they were both really good.
They are. It's interesting. I think Faceless Corruptor, particularly because in certain classes it had this ability to stick around, and in Paladin and Druid, you could really make more of it overall. I think if it was a limitation of looking at Faceless Corruptor in 3 specific classes, because of that, because you could maybe you could trade in, and the 5/1 would have the ability to be buffed, or something else, or you'd have an easier time activating it. I think I would lean towards that. But I'd say saying Faceless Corruptor as a neutral overall. I'll go with Meteor. I'll go with Meteor here, and we'll see what Kellen has to say.
I feel like you keep picking not because of what you want to take, but because you want to.
No, I was before you started.
Oh, okay. I was just funny. It was just good.
This is kind of a weird thing where it's just normally in good conversation, you don't want to be really don't want to be thinking too much about what your opinion is or what you're going to say before the other person. But here it's kind of incentivized, because you don't want to just be oh, never mind what I was thinking. I just don't want to sound dumb.
Yeah,
and I'll
right,
just agree, right? So it's just before you're going, and I think this would be for good reason. I'm not sure if sure if you got like what's your thing. I think I would be in the minority on the Meteor thing here because of like Corruptor's upside. But yeah, I'll go with Meteor and we'll see what Kellen said.
Kellen said Faceless Corruptor. So it looks like Faceless is moving on.
That's fair.
Very fair. This I maybe was a little hard on Meteor. It was really impactful, but I remember
like, so it's like the thing is like that's not the card that's a question as why it's on the list. Implosion is that like Meteor Meteor is just so much better than say Implosion, right?
Oh, for sure. This next one's kind of interesting. They do kind of do some similar things to some degree, but they're very different. So we got Libram of Justice, which is a paladin spell. It's a 5-mana spell. It basically casts a quality on your opponent's board only. It sets them all to 1 health and then summons a Light's Justice in your gives you Light's Justice to clean it up. And then we've got this card. I have a crazy clip of this one. Expendable Performers. So this is a 7-mana epic card for Demon Hunter. Summons 7/1/1 rush, and if they all die, I forget how it's worded exactly, but when they all die, it'll summon 7/1/1s again with rush. So I'll let you go first on this one.
I'll put it this way: in more games, I will say if my opponent has Libram of Justice, I can still win.
Mm-hmm.
If more so than when I'm looking at my opponent and I say if they have Expendable Performers, there's no way I can win.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you going with the Performers then?
Performers.
Okay.
It's actually dumb that in my head that this isn't close given what Libram does. It's like it almost on paper to be like, but it's just like based on how I've like games I've been up against where it's just like on top of that this is another kind of not sure if this should go into the evaluation, but part of the really thing that is wrong with Demon Hunters is they have Performers and Cycle of Hatred at the same mana cost, and it's nigh impossible to play around both of those. So you're whatever you do, you're making a wrong decision if they have the other card. And that's one of the that's just one of the things where it's just like you can't if Paladin has Libram, right? That's their thing to get rid of your stuff, and you can think about that. But when going into turn 5 or even later turns, you can be like, okay, if I'm it's still really powerful, but I can kind of think about this. When it's going into turn 7 versus Demon Hunter, it's just whatever decision I end up making, I'm very likely going to get bleeped.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Expendable. Let's see. Kellen, what do you vote? Just curious. He actually voted for Libra.
I'm surprised.
I don't know what it is exactly, to be honest. I don't know if he doesn't play a lot of Demon Hunter or whatever, but he doesn't seem very high on the cards that... I understand that but some of these are just crazy. He's not as high on the Demon Hunter cards. I'm not exactly sure why. It's just something I've gathered from talking to him before. So
I think there could also be a thing where it's just this is a thing. It's if there's any measurement of impact, it's just Libram of Justice has more impact within Paladin than Performers does within Demon Hunter, because here's the thing is Demon Hunter has so many broken things that if you're looking at impact, then it's kind of nothing's super impactful because the next thing is just super impactful anyways, right?
Yeah.
But I think Performers. I think for me, if I'm in a game and I'm thinking about playing around my opponent's cards, I am more likely to be able to win a game in which I'm thinking about Justice than Performers.
Well, I'm glad that this is one where I'm kind of glad we overrode Kellen, because I'm not sure what he has against this card, but oh wow, I'm interested to see what comes on the next round, the next one we're about to do, because I'm curious. Expendable Performance is going to move on to the second round. I know which one's probably going to move on, and that's going to be a really interesting matchup. So next we've got, and again, remember guys, that the power level of these cards you might be like, why is this card on this list? And part of it is because this is showing a history of the game, and it's not simply about the pure power level of the card. It's about the power level kind of scaled to the time it came out. So it's to try to give cards that's why for instance Shredder moved on, right? I think so. That's why cards like Shredder, could take the card out. It did. What was it up against? Shredder was up against Silver Sword. Actually, I don't even remember which one won. Oh, that might be wrong. So, did Silver win? Oh shit, I thought Shredder won. My bad. All right, well that's a bad example. Don't listen to me. My bad. All right, so next we got Stubborn Gastropod, which was a 2-mana 1/2 taunt with poison. It was a neutral card. Very impactful on the game. Was huge. It was like all over the place. And Conjurer's Calling, which started out at 3 mana, and it destroyed a minion and summoned 2 of its mana cost.
Twin spell as well.
Sorry, twin spell as well. My
if
bad.
it wasn't for twin spell, this would be a conversation.
That's true. Yeah. So this is one of those times where I have to say, I'm not saying that Gastropod had a chance to go very far. I wanted him to be represented because, like,
he's a round one-er, sure. I guess I can see it making the list because, like, it was a solid card. I'm not sure if I would have put it on the list of 64, but
yeah.
like notably, we've seen Conjures at 3 recently, and that card, like, Gastropod was disruptive, but Conjures was a win condition. Like, in a really dumb way.
Yeah, so Conjures, we're evaluating this at 3 mana, remember, even though it's 4 mana now. But No,
they reverted the nerf when it came back most recently.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so we got to play with it at 3. It's pretty fresh in my mind.
But I'm going to say this, even if we were evaluating it at 4 mana, it would win this. And frankly, it would probably still, this is one of those cards that I'm wondering if it will make it close to the finals, because it's just so many crazy things you can do with it. And, like, the fact that you could wait and, like, it got to your point where your opponent ran out of cards and you just kind of had a big card sitting there, the amount of value you could create with 3 mana was just, and there's so many rush cards now and stuff. Like, there's just so many. It's kind of like an evolved mechanic. Like, when you have random cards, there's just so many nutty things. You can summon, like, a King Crush, or, like, and win the game, or, like, there's just so many weird things that can happen. So I think this is probably one of the more lopsided picks. Yeah, so anyway, Conjurer's Calling's moving on to number 2. It's going to go up against, by the way, you guys can't really see this, but Expendable Performers is going to be up against Conjurer's Calling. That's going to be quite a discussion.
Did we hear what Kellen's agreed on the Conjures and the stuff?
If he didn't vote Conjures, I'm going to, just... he voted Conjures. He did.
Yeah.
He did. All right, so moving on. Oh, wow. This one's... some of these I'm just like, whoa. Like, all right, so we got Spike Ridge Steed versus Venomous Scorpion. Spike Ridge Steed was a 6 mana 2/6. Well, it was basically a 6 mana 2/6 buff that gave it taunt and then gave it also Death Rattle summon. I guess it was what was it called? A Stegodon. So which was a 4. Yeah. So it would summon another 4 mana 2/6 taunt. Yeah, this is one of those first value cards that just, like, when your opponent played it, like, you just had no way to get through the amount of value it produced at the time. And then Venomous Scorpion, which I'm sure many people are very, very familiar with. Now it's a newer card from the Barons. It's a 3 mana 1/3 beast with poison, and it discovers a random spell. All right, well, I think on a power level, like, this isn't even close. Scorpion is just, like, I think it's, like, pretty significantly higher. Go ahead.
Steed at the time, right? If we're evaluating at the time,
we are
was so dominant. I think there was one other card at least that, like, when it was up against Steed, was maybe it was a weapon of some sort around that time. I'm trying to remember, because I distinctly remember being like, okay, Steed's amazing, but there was, like, at least another thing that would show up, and
right.
Maybe I should look at the old cards there. So I guess there is that, but I'm going to cheat a little bit and say, okay, while Spiked Ridge Steed was available at the time, if this feels weird, but, like, if you throw, like, what spell do you pick over Scorpid is kind of this thing, because, like, any meta in which Scorpid exists in the future, it's just like you have the potential of getting that spell or something that's just, like, better for you anyways. It's it's weird that it's weird. I feel like, especially like when Scorpid was just out, it felt so insurmountable, and it feels like, there's like sometimes you have a Scorpid as well, and like you don't just lose a game when a Scorpid gets played, and Steed did oftentimes feel like you just lost a game when Steed get played. So I guess like in the history of things, like Steed felt like it was greater impact at the time, so not even necessarily greater impact because Scorpid's a neutral, but would be a scarier card. Like a Steed getting played back then was scarier than a Scorpid getting played now, I think, depending on class. But I'm leaning towards Scorpid. It's just like it's hard for me to like take. It's like when I'm drafting, right? Like I see Scorpid versus a spell, and I'm just like, there are so few spells that I would consider taking over Scorpid because I would just want to guarantee the consistency of having that spell. I'm thinking like Arbor Up is like the only one that's immediately coming to mind. And I'm even then just like, you know what? I'd say it's fair to draft the Scorpid still there and hope for the best. But yeah, I think I want to say Scorpid on this one, but I can see the argument.
So this one, the only reason I'm struggling with this one is the meta impact of Steed and the power level at the time was probably the best card printed in that set.
The other card was Vine Cleaver, by the way.
Yeah. Well, Vine Cleaver, that was one of those. Yeah, it was definitely good. That was actually a hard one not to include. I'm trying to decide if the meta impact and the power level at the time is actually greater than Scorpid is now. There's a lot of ways to discover. I don't know. I'm going to have to go with Scorpid. It's just it's got to be one of the strongest cards ever made. I'll be honest, this one really hurt me because I think Steed is one of those cards that's just so, the meta impact was, and you remember again, people listening, the way we're evaluating is not just pure power level, because that would make some of these discussions completely meaningless.
Is Vine Cleaver not on the list?
I don't know. I think it didn't. I think it actually didn't make it. But I think that was one of the ones that I fought for. But like we had to like at some point make some whatever.
Yeah, you have to make.
I had to I had to work with Kel a little bit. He definitely thinks we definitely have different opinion on certain cards. I actually thought Prime Glyph was shouldn't necessarily been in the top 64, but was a contender. He didn't even understand why I liked it. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying.
Well, I think what did Prime Glyph do?
That was a 2-mana spell that discovered a spell but it cost 2 less.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would put Ruined Orb over it, but yeah, that's. I mean,
actually, I'm surprised.
Like a card that I can see.
Yeah. Anyway, that was another meta time period discussion, not so much of power level discussion. So anyway, Scorpid's moving on. Kellen actually voted for Steed, which actually that doesn't actually surprise me too much.
Like I see it, like it's depending on like how you're evaluating the card, like the power of the impact at the time.
Right. All right. So next we've got Dark Iron Skulker, which was a 5-mana 4/3 rogue minion that dealt 2 damage to enemy minions that were not damaged. Is that correct? Right? I think I got that right.
If I recall.
And then Fire Plume Phoenix was a 4-mana 3/3 elemental that was neutral that dealt 2 damage to whatever minion you wanted, or target you wanted, I mean. This one's a tough one for me. I have to say that I'm very biased with this one. I'm just throwing that out there right now. I was Fire Plume King with this. I would draft 7 of these things because, like, not maybe that many, but you have to remember at the time there was just no other card that could swing the mid game as hard as this did. Now we have Scorpid that is definitely stronger than Phoenix, but at the time period this was the only one that was out there, and it was just a really big meta card for me. And I think I wanted some of the cards that were maybe not the craziest to be represented, so this is one of them. Some people might ask me why this is on the list, but I think this card was very underrated in some degree. But Skulker was also just one of those cards that just, when people played it, it was just like, yep, I lost. That's it. So I don't know.
Yeah, I felt like Skulker did something very unique for Rogue because Rogue typically had a very difficult time with dealing with board states. Like it
In
just didn't
board
have good
flips, yeah.
AoE. So like I feel like he gets points there, but I don't remember Skulker being the absolute like dominant force that like on the meta that Fireplume Phoenix is. And I
Mm.
feel like I'm being very flip-floppy here, so I apologize for people that like consistency because like here kind of like I feel like I want to give like more points to Phoenix for the impact of the meta at the time. Like I like if I'm thinking about it now, it's just like I would draft a Skulker over a Phoenix,
Right.
but um if so I okay, so for the last pick, I definitely leaned Scorpid. And I
Hmm.
guess I guess I'll put it this way. Like if Scorpid existed at the time of Spikered Steed, I'd be drafting the Scorpid, and if they both existed now, I'd be drafting Scorpid. I think if Fireplume Phoenix existed after Skulker, right?
Yes.
It's a neutral versus a class card. Like I guess you know what? I'm going to give it to Phoenix.
Okay.
There's two things here. So there's the higher mana cost. It's that Phoenix again was reach. It's neutral reach because it
Hmm.
wasn't limited to minions, and it also is not limited to damage cards. So like if like oftentimes going into turn four, like if Scorpid could only deal damage to an undamaged minion, it would be a whole different like it'd be
Hmm.
a whole different thing. It wouldn't be that like that actually mattered significantly. And I feel like again a little bit inconsistent on my part for thinking about the big impact. And I'm probably doing that again because Phoenix just showed up so much more than Skulker.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'll give it to Phoenix here.
Yeah. My again, I'm admitting I'm a tiny bit biased, but um it's kind of funny. Sometimes I wonder if like this card should even have made it on the list when I think about all the cards that are there.
I
But
think other card that I think Vine Cleaver should have like made it on the list over Phoenix, but like it was
yeah,
impactful at the time.
yeah, I'm gonna go with Phoenix. Um, I'm just gonna go with it. I just think its impact. Its impact was pretty great, actually, and for a
It
card that
is
was
it is very surprising it made past first round though. Like maybe I'm
well, it is.
like it
It honestly, there's very honestly, I will say there's probably not tons of cards on the list it would beat, but I do think this is one of them it can. And Kellen did actually go for Skulker. I didn't say anything, but I knew he was. I just he kind of forced. I'm not saying that was wrong, but he pushed this one to be on there, and I didn't necessarily. I'm not necessarily. I didn't agree with it necessarily, but at the same time, there's just a lot of opinions about certain cards and stuff. So it's just like, again,
yeah.
this is what it is. It's just crazy. All right, moving on. We got so Fireplume Phoenix is going on to round two, which is maybe the one of the surprises of the whole thing. It'll probably get knocked out pretty fast. All right, so we got
It's not making it to the final round.
No, there's no way. So we got Keeper of Alderaan against Plague Protodrake. Keeper of Alderaan was a 4 mana paladin minion. It was a 4 mana 3/4 that set a minion's health and attack and health to 3. And Plague Protodrake is an 8 mana 8/8 dragon, death rattle, summon a 7-drop. Huh. So I Protodrake is really good. I think a lot of people would lean Protodrake simply because of just how much it's seen.
Yeah,
Um,
it's you would
but
have to give. I think you would have to give it that just if you were based on like the appearance. But that's kind of like you would always go with neutrals that way. I think Uldamon's just a stronger card.
yeah, well, Alderman at the time, again, this is one of the, remember, we are evaluating based on its time period. It just did something that other cards didn't because it could actually just give you tempo by giving your 1/1 Silverhand a 2/2 buff. That basically made it a 4 mana 5/6.
You would
Or
take an Uldaman over a Proto Drake right now, right?
oh yeah, I would.
Like on the current meta, like that's the thing. It's like even like
Yeah.
Uldam like yeah, like if that's like with these old cards, right? That's especially where it's just like it really like oh right now, given against this brand spanking new card, like Proto Drake is kind of a meta definer because it shows up so much and it's good, but it's you could argue that it's maybe power wise not necessarily deserving given like how many like with Scorpid being around, like out of the newest cards, like it's good, it's fine, but it's a card that sometimes you bypass because your curve just doesn't really work for it. And Keeper Voldemort was just one of those cards you could just grab. Like, that thing was a monster.
Yeah, and again, Protodrake was a card that I did not include. I did not necessarily, again, remember that making a list like this, part of it was try to produce some variety. So, like, some of these picks are going to seem a little weird, like even this one potentially. I think Protodrake could have beaten some cards on the list, but Alderman actually is one of those cards that it hasn't been seen for a while, but man, its impact was insane. And it was one of those really Paladin, other than maybe like Equality at the time, like didn't have a lot of ways to deal with like big problems. They just had to be ahead enough that they could push damage and win, but this gave them a way to actually control a little bit. And it, like, again, like I said, it could also be used for tempo or healing. So it was just so flexible in a class that normally isn't like crazy flexible. So, yeah, Keeper Alderman is my vote. It sounds like Keeper Alderman is your vote. And where is he at here? Keeper Alderman is also Kellen's vote. So that one's a sweep. Next we've got, oh man, I love this. I love that we include this one. So we got Flame Wreath Faceless, 4 mana 7/7 Overload 2. This card was so insane at the time when it came out. It was like, I remember how much impact it had on ladder too and stuff. And then we've got Imprisoned Vile Fiend, potentially, in my personal opinion, one of the strongest 2-drops in history. So this is a 2 mana 3/5. It's dormant for 2 turns, but it has Rush. So when it comes out, it's a 3/5 with Rush. Pretty much the most stats you can produce for 2 mana in general. So very, very strong. But you could also argue that Faceless was probably the most stats at the time that you could develop for 4 mana. Even though there was a pretty significant cost with the Overload. So there's also that to consider. I'm not even sure if I said the Overload 2 when I first said it, but it does have an Overload of 2. I don't actually think this one is significantly close to me, because although I do acknowledge the impact of the Faceless, Flame Wreath Faceless card at the time, Imprisoned Vile Fiend, and we got to be a little careful because this card's been in the meta for like way longer than normally a card would be. It's been in the meta literally since Demon Hunter's been in part of the game. But I do think that, like, I'm not sure if I just do not pass Vile Fiends. I take Vile Fiends over Claw Machines. I take it over really, really, really strong cards over and over again. And like, I like to have 2 of them in my deck, and like, because I know I can consistently get 1 on 2 that way with hard mulligans, and you have it on 2, and a lot of times it just is that is enough. So I'm gonna go with Vile Fiend here. So that's me.
I guess for me, this is a little bit hard. I think I can see this being close. So for me, Vile Fiend is a really good 2, but there's a point of contention to where it's just like some people are actually on Team Sneaky Delinquent over Imprisoned Vile Fiend.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing where I'm just like thinking like, okay, is Vile Fiend Vile Fiend is arguably the best neutral 2, but it's an arguable thing. I'm trying to think, it's like, was there really a better 4 cost card, not only in Shaman but overall, than Flame Wreath Faceless was? The thing is, Flame Wreath Faceless was susceptible to hard removal and could because of Overload could take the swing. I'm gonna go with Vile Fiend here as well, solely for the sake of, you know what, Flame Wreath Faceless, if you didn't have Overload, I would have voted for you, but I don't like Overload. I'm not going to let an Overload card get through on my watch.
All right. Kellen actually went with the Faceless.
That's fair.
It is fair. It really is. And again, this is one of those cards you got to remember the time period when it came in. But all right, moving on. We're getting closer to the end here. We got like 8 or 9 more left to go. This is a lot because it's 32 different one-on-ones. This is the longest and the hardest of the list here.
And again, if you feel some inconsistency for I will say, like, this is a good reminder for everybody listening or watching. If you feel me being inconsistent, just a quick reminder, this is hard, and this is the hardest round, I think, because we don't necessarily have a hard, like a good, like a set rule set. And also, I came into this again, just like you know.
Okay, that's
just
fair.
fresh.
Let's remind people. Yeah, Kellen was supposed to be in Isherwood's spot right now, and like literally, he saved this podcast because I was like, I really kind of prepped this, and Kellen was like, we're gonna have to not record tonight. I'm like, I just don't know if I can do that because I kind of set everything up for it to happen. So like, and we've done this before where Kellen's been replaced by people. Like, it's not uncommon. But what's not common is like telling Isherwood literally while he's streaming, like while I'm streaming, like frantically, like, hey Ish, can you help a brother out here, please? So anyway, big thank you to Ish. He's gonna always have a special place in this grand tournament. Hopefully him and I don't screw it up too much, but we'll see. All right, so next we've got this one's interesting. Fungalmancer versus Imprisoned Ganarg. This is another one where Kellen did not want Ganarg to be on the list. I'm not really.
Wait, why?
Ask him. I honestly could not really. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I don't know, man. I don't know. This is one of those ones. Some of the ways, like I said, Kellen is a great player. Like his average and stuff is really good, but I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying that like. He has a very unique. He kind of reminds me of you, honestly, Ish. In some ways, like your style is very unique. Like you get like kind of things out of cards that a lot of people don't, and like that. That's something unique to me about you, and I find that kind of similar with Kellen. Like he really stretches like what's possible with cards a lot. So like I could understand. He just has a very like. Anyway, that's just.
I do like stretching out, but like I'm not going to deny. Like, is Imprisoned Ganarg like is this? I don't know, but I would not be surprised if it was simply the card that the one drop with the highest played win rate on turn one, right? And I think if that's the case, and again, I don't know, probably is, but if it is, that just says something. I mean, maybe Zombie Chow back then had the highest, but like as a one, like it might just be. That's actually like a really good evaluation. Like, what does this card like? What's the win rate when played on curve for a card? And Ganarg just like maybe it doesn't go the distance, but I mean, for me, I'm not even sure. Did we mention Fungalmancer's stats?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, actually, we didn't even mention what either card technically did. So Fungalmancer is a 5-mana 2/2 that gives it adjacent minions +2/+2. Battlecry give adjacent minions +2/+2 stats. And Imprisoned Ganarg is a 1-mana 2/2 dormant card that's dormant for 2 turns, and when it activates, it equips a Fiery War Axe. So
yeah, I mean, people really like Fungalmancer for good reason, and I could like, and it's a creative card, but like, and I try to get the hipster points by doing something. I'm going vanilla. I'm going Ganarg. Like, it's just.
So
is it the best? Is it the best one drop ever? Is the question. I think.
Well, that was actually when I talked to Kellen, and I felt like I had to fight him to get this on the list a little bit. Which, but again, please, anyone listening, this is not me like crapping on Kellen. He's not here, so he can't really defend himself. I'm just telling the story of how we actually come up with the cards, and we didn't agree on everything. Believe me, it was actually it was very difficult. Even if I did this by myself, this would have been difficult. But anyway, I kept telling him like this is literally the strongest one drop of all time, and I don't even think it's that close. And Zombie Chow was like a massive impact, but like this card was just like
not only is it like the strongest card on one, is I think it doesn't become a liability in the way that Zombie Chow could in games, right? So it doesn't like it maintains utility later. It's just like
I mean, it might be late in the game. It might suck a little because the impact is a little delayed. But even late game, like sometimes all you really need as a warrior is reach. And late game, that's what it gives you.
And the thing is, like with Zombie Chow, sometimes you couldn't play it because it was it was too risky to give your opponent that health.
And by the way, if you're really, really good at the game, you can do what Dreads did on stream, which is you get rid of your Gorehowl because you forget that your Ganarg is on the board.
I've now
Oh.
I have done a few. I've done a few of those.
Yeah, yeah, man. So yeah. But I will say, in defense, I could see people being a little upset that Fungomancer, because like I said, we are evaluating based on impact on the meta. And Fungomancer was it was similar to Bone Mare in a certain respect. It really had a major impact. You really, like, honestly, when it was coming into turn 4, turn 5, like, you had to really start thinking about, can I get rid of this guy's board? Can I even deal with, like, if he has Fungomancer, do I just lose? And you would end up having to trade, and it would Fungomancer was a card that the threat of that card extended games in a way that you probably didn't even realize. Like, because people were thinking about it all the time because it was just so scary and so, like, game warping. But I'm still gonna go Ganark because it's just insane. Let's see. I'm sure. If Kellen went Ganark, I'm gonna be.
If he wasn't impressed with it being on the list, he's definitely not.
There's never a way he voted for it. Let's see what he did. He voted Fungomancer, I'm sure. So anyway, sorry, Kellen, but I do think he's wrong on this one a little bit. Though I do think that Fungomancer really could have made it a round or two, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
If that makes sense. This was an unfortunate matchup. And this is another unfortunate matchup that I saw that I'm knowing Ish. I was chomping at the bit on this one a little bit. So we've got Troublemaker. Oh wait, they can't see it. Now they can. Oh wait, there we go. Troublemaker versus Imprisoned Scap Imp. So Troublemaker is a warrior minion. It is an 8-mana 6/8. It summons 2 3/3s every turn that attack random enemy minions. And then we've got Imprisoned Scrap Imp, which I guess we would go by the original.
Yeah,
because it was nerfed, I think, more than a month out. So some of these I forgot. I didn't think about them as much as I should have, I guess. But anyway, is it a 2-mana? Wait, is it what's the stats on? I'm sorry.
It's a dormant 2-mana 3/3, and when it originally came out, and when it activated after 2 turns, it would give all the minions in your hand +2/+2 stats.
Which is what we're using.
Now, what? Yeah, and now currently it gives +2/+1.
And still is really good.
Yes.
So I'm very sadly going to be voting. I'm really sadly going to be voting Troublemaker. But this is one of my least favorite matchups I saw on the whole list because I really like both these cards a lot, and I really do. But I'm going to go with Troublemaker. I'm not going to I can go into some detail, but
it's honestly, it is a tricky one for me. I'm trying to quickly formulate an idea here. The +2/+2 was, I think, a significant, like the particularly like +2 health is so significant when you have taunts and other things. It's still very good. I think now, like if it was current cards, I think I like the Troublemaker. Scrap Imp also, like, people are learned if your opponent plays Scrap Imp, you just like try to hit that face as much as possible and hope your opponent didn't get taunts in hand. But at +2/+2, I feel like it didn't play I mean, I'm just not remembering that meta super well at the moment. They're both cards that, like, they're not on, like, they're beatable cards. I don't know. This is a tricky one. They're very unique. That's the problem with some of these picks, is like the uniqueness of them are so
and
high.
And that's actually a good point of saying, like, that's what makes a good arena card, actually, is it does a unique thing that other cards don't, which a lot of times when you're trying to build a deck, in arena, we're trying to piece everything together to build the most complete deck we can. So any card that's flexible or does something unique is very good, you know?
I think I'll put it, I'll so this is hard because I'm not sure if this is original. Like, what would I rather have? Like, what would I rather have in a, like, would I rather have, if I was drafting Warlock, a Scrap Imp, or if I was in Warrior, would I rather have a Troublemaker? And right now, I definitely rather have a Troublemaker, but I'm not sure if that would have changed at the initial Scrap Imp cost. So I'm not sure if I really should have swung it. +2/+2 was really good. And I'm trying to think of the other cards that were in the meta at the time. I don't think we had the 3/4 that gave lifesteal to demons, which really helped Scrap Imp out a lot as well initially.
Hmm.
Um, so maybe if I was including that flexibility, I'd still go with Scrap. It's
Yeah.
tricky. I think I'm going to go for a more modern evaluation. It's a tough one. I'll go with Troublemaker as well.
All right. Kellen also went with Troublemaker, which again, I never thought that Scrap Imp was going to like win the whole thing, but I think it was an interesting enough card that like it could sneak through a few rounds and have some interesting discussions. I unfortunately I did do this completely random because, gosh, even if I tried to seed this in some like respectable way, that would have just been a train wreck and made my head hurt. So I just was like, whatever, it's gonna be random and we'll just see where it lays. Okay, so next we've got I think this is the only Echo card on the list, which was cool. I like this card to be on the list because of the impact. But these cards are both pretty interesting. So we have Warpath, which was a warrior spell, 2 mana, deal 1 damage to all minions. And it was an Echo card, so you could technically with 10 mana cast it 5 times and do five damage. And Vilespine Slayer, which was a 5 mana 3/4 combo card that would destroy an enemy minion. So Vilespine was one of those crazy tempo spikes that when we first saw was like, whoa, what is this? But I have to say Warpath is definitely one of those cards that was very meta impacting. Like, it is very common to face a warrior at the time that would have like 3 Warpaths and just like you couldn't win because like you try really hard to play around it and not play your whole board. But like the value they would get from it. At this time, I don't know if Warpath would just have the damage output would be enough to make it good enough, but at the time it was really, really good. So, what do you think on this one, Ish?
I'd say, you know what? Vilespine, pretty sure this is one of I think this is one of Dread's favorites.
Yeah.
We'll make sure Vilespine gets through just for that. No, I think I like Vilespine more than Warpath.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just if you guys know, Kellen is apparently in the crowd right now listening, so he's back. So, anyway, I am gonna go with Vilespine Slayer. It sounds like you're going with Slayer, and it looks like Kellen went with Slayer. So, and by the way, Kellen, if you want to, no pressure. If you want to jump in, just let us know. We can get you into the call. It's not hard, but if not, we're almost done anyway. So your votes are here, so I guess it's not that big of a deal. All right. So next we got how many we got left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got 7 left. All right. Next we got, these are 2 doozies. Well, I don't think this is gonna be close, which is sad. Poor little Basilisk. Twin Tyrant versus Stoneskin Basilisk. This is one of those cards again. Maybe I think it does show you though. We talked about this. You could argue that it maybe wasn't correct, or maybe it wasn't, but the impact Poison has on Arena is actually pretty amazing. There's a lot of Poison cards, and I think it's one of those things. Like, I was one of those people way back in the day that I would take Cobra, and it really did a lot of work, and I was always surprised. I think it was one of those cards. I was always so surprised like how much impact it had on the game, and it was one of the first cards like with Poison where I learned that like by playing a Poison, like bad opponents would play badly against it. Instead of just giving you a 4-drop or whatever, they would try to play around it, and then in the meantime you could just develop tempo and just win the game because of it. So I started to really learn about how good players were and bad players were and stuff. So it was interesting. I always think about Poison when I think about that. So anyway, then we got Twin Tyrant up against Basilisk. Twin Tyrant was, oh god, I'm so glad that card's gone. 8 mana 4/8 dragon, deal 4 damage to 2 random enemy minions. And then we got Stoneskin Basilisk, which is one of the craziest poison minions ever at the time. It was a 3 mana 1/1 beast, neutral card, but with Divine Shield poison. So it would take you could potentially kill 2 minions with it easily, or if they did not have a way to ping it. So I don't know if you want to discuss this much, but I think Twin Tyrant's probably going to take this down. But
yeah, I have a hard time remembering. Like, Basilisk is really good now, but I'm remembering Basilisk more so with Demon Hunter being around, and it like feels like maybe if I was thinking about Basilisk without Demon Hunter being around, it'd be closer. But I feel like Twin Tyrant definitely defined the meta was defining the meta at the time. So yeah, I'd go with Twin Tyrant. We'll send another one of the big dragons through.
Twin Tyrant. Yeah. Well, it's funny. So it's interesting you brought about another big dragons. When I was starting initially on this list, I thought about including legendaries because I wanted all cards. I was like, oh man, it'd be cool to have this card and this card. And then I started realizing it's like, well, I'd have to include Ysera, the new Ysera. I'd have to include the new Alex.
Yeah.
I'd have to include the DQA, like the one that summoned the 0-mana dragons. And I was like, man, this is just going to take up the whole list and it's not going to be very fun. So
yeah.
I wanted to represent.
You could even have to do a legendary tier list. You could just do a dragon tier list.
I know. And I wanted to represent the, Fire Plume Phoenixes of the world and those kind of cards. Anyway,
wow, I just realized that, huh? Mage Scribe is not on the list. I guess that would have been an interesting maybe inclusion.
That was very close.
Yeah,
I personally think that is a little bit of an overrated card. I do think it's very, very good. But it's hard when you say overrated because it's like, what do you mean by overrated? I just mean it's not. It's definitely good, but I think people think
pass up on it. I pass up on it enough for me to understand it not being on the list.
Yeah. All right. So next, this is kind of a weird one. So Twin Tyrant's moving on. I'm assuming Kellen voted for Twin Tyrant. Yep, he did. All right. So this one is. Oh, this is really interesting. The two board clears ended up against each other. How funny is that? This actually happened before. We had this happen with Light Bomb, and that's so. Well, I mean, okay, no, well, it wasn't. It was Puzzle Box, which isn't really technically a board clear, but that's kind of how it was used. That's really funny to me. So anyway, we're actually evaluating Flame Strike at 4 damage, even though it is 5 damage and got buffed. We're evaluating it at 4 because that's kind of what it was really. That's when it really mattered. So we're evaluating it based on like classic and that kind of thing, and going forward.
Yeah, I will say, interestingly enough, the buffs help now, but like on classic, I think 4 damage Flame Strike is maybe better than 5 damage Flame Strike is now. Weirdly enough, but like of course, like 5 is better than 4 currently, but if you compare them, like the impact of Flame Strike at 4 at the time is probably more impactful than what Flame Strike is doing now at 5. Given that being said, I mean, it's up against Cycle, which is just kind of just Flame Strike with upside.
Yeah. I don't like that these are up against each other.
So the funny thing is the same argument for Expendable Performers. Like, it's an interesting thing. Because Cycle and Expendable Performers coexist, it's what makes those cards, and this might be a little bit cheating, but the existence of the other card makes them both stronger and more impactful. And I can't really look at them in a vacuum because, again, you can't really get into situations in which you can play around both and they're the same exact mana cost. They never should have been. One of them should have been 8. I don't care which one.
Right.
But it was just, I have a hard time looking at a vacuum. It's going to be Cycle for me.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really hard. And again, this is unfortunately one of those things where I watched Flame. Again, I entered the meta around TGT and I definitely saw Flame Strike be still really insane. And when you had a couple of them in your deck, it was really good. But Cycle is just there just shouldn't, board clears should not develop board like that. Like, it'd be fine if it was like 1/1s or something, I don't know, but like where it wasn't a massive impact, but like 3/3s, it's like, I mean, literally you can go face sometimes and you purposely like play an Og Merchant just to get an extra, you can upgrade your minions as part of the deal, which is just like, it feels wrong, Sometimes I'm playing and I'm like, man, this just doesn't feel right. I'm going to go with Cycle. The power level, it's hard to make the comparison between the Flame Strike power level and this power level because they are there's such an immense gap in time.
Yeah. I understand people saying I understand, right? Because it's you would be evaluating from a historical perspective. Like, I get going for Flame Strike.
Yeah. All right. So let's see what Kellen voted. He voted for Flame Strike, and I honestly,
and it makes sense from a historical perspective, as we mentioned.
Yeah. And this is one where I almost went over the edge. All right, next we've got Potion of Madness versus Defile. I love both of these cards. I don't love them. I'm sorry. I love Defile. I didn't love Potion.
We don't love Potion of
No,
Madness.
I'm sorry. I guess I'm glad they're both on the list, and I'm kind of glad they're up.
I am glad Potion of Madness is gone. I'm not necessarily glad Defile is gone.
Yeah. So Potion Madness is a 1-mana spell. You steal a 2 attack or less minion from your opponent, and then you can take control of it for the turn. And Defile was a 2-mana deal 1 damage to all minions. How do you word it? I know it basically, if a minion died, it would recast itself.
Yeah, it would deal. Wasn't it 1 damage?
It's 1 damage. Yeah, 2 mana deal 1 damage.
Yeah, 2 mana deal 1 damage. If a minion died, repeat again. Essentially, that's what it was. So if there was minions at 1, 2, 3, 4 health, you would Defile, and it would keep on repeating until the board was cleared. And death rattles would go off during the time of Defile as well, which was important. Like the death rattles didn't resolve after everything.
Yeah. So what I will say is the reason I love Defile so much is it was one of the first cards I ever played that I felt like it really let me use my brain, and I got an advantage because I could process information in board states faster than people that don't play as much, don't have 15,000 arena wins or whatever I have. It gave me an advantage because and I also, when the mechanics and the ordering of how things come out, and it really I really loved Defile. It was just one of those cards, and it was really strong. I mean, and you actually could try to play around it because you would try to set up your board states where okay, I don't want to set up a chain here, a chain reaction, So it was kind of really interesting on the counterplay of it as well.
Yeah.
But Potion of Madness power level is just holy it. As much as I don't want it to win, I don't know if I can. If I can pick Defile over it, but
I'm going to pick Defile over it for the same reason that I discounted mind control tech.
Mm-hmm.
It's the problem. The strength of Potion of Madness was that they could have it, not necessarily that you had it as a player.
Mm-hmm.
And and I'm also biased. I think every good player in the game, Defile is one of their favorite cards. I don't know a good player that didn't like that. If we were just going for pure favorites, Defile might just win. If we're just oh, what's your favorite? What was your favorite arena card? Defile might win out of a popular vote.
And I've thought about doing lists after this where it's the most triggering cards of all time, or the just most
Potion would go Potion is up there with MCT, but I think it's a thing where if you're holding on to, in a world in which, okay, what would you rather draft in a draft where you could draft both of these? Defile, I think, over Potion of Madness, because it's generally it can oftentimes help you in the situations where Potion can, and its upside is so high. It's it has so much potential, and Potion did have a lot of potential. But the counterplay is more interesting. Definitely, Defile is a much more interesting card overall. I'm going Defile. I'm using the MCT argument against Potion of Madness. The problem was that it exists, not that it was actually there all the time.
This is one where I'm struggling because I'm trying to not be biased. If I was going to be biased, I would just slam Defile, and because I hate Potion of Madness, and I'm just take it down. But that's not really what I'm doing here.
Yeah,
so I can't really do.
I mean, we can it's one of those ones where we can Cal Abel's vote can always be the decider if you go with Potion.
That's true. I could let him decide.
I mean, I will predict that Kellen's going Defile.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see.
So I'm pretty confident of letting the vote go there. So go ahead and go with Potion of Madness.
Well, in that case,
a person that doesn't want Gnarg on the list is going with Defile, is what I say.
I'm really struggling. This is actually one of those ones I really, really hate to think about. All right, well, impact. It did have a major impact on the game. I'm gonna go with Potion of Madness. I guess I'll just let Kellen decide. I don't know. Oh, he went with Potion of Madness.
Oh my goodness, y'all are gonna have. You know what? I get it when I get it when the people are like, oh, I gotta get a Reddit. I gotta type a comment. This is what I'm like, this is it.
You're gonna go make a comment now, right now, while we're right in the middle of the podcast.
I've got something to say.
All right.
Oh my goodness.
It's fair. I get it. Well, I only did it because you said to let him decide. I don't know if I really agree, but it is what it is. So Potion of Madness is moving on. All right. We got four.
That is, I think the only there's not very many that haven't got. I am. That's the one I'm most disappointed with so far.
Yeah, I'm disappointed they faced off each other because I really like the file. All right, so next we've got Super Collider. Oh, this is another weapon that made it. I wonder if Vine Cleaver should have made it over Super Collider. That's actually interesting.
I think not necessarily over Super Collider. There's other things, but this is again kind of a first go of this. It is what it is.
Yeah. All right, so Super Collider and Lackeys, by the way, is what we're going to debate here. Super Collider is a 5-mana 1/3 weapon. It forced the minion that it hits to attack one of the randomly either side, hit one of the adjacent minions, and then Lackeys. There was actually a lot of them. I guess I'll run through them real quick. They're all 1-mana 1/1. All 1-mana 1/1 battle cries. One gave +2 health and taunt. One was discover a spell. One was create a 2-drop. One was Draconic Lackey, which discovered a dragon. I think I missed one. Oh, one dealt 2 damage, and one did +1 attack and rush. Actually, okay, I got them all. All right. So I'm going to be flat and honest with you guys that in terms of the way I did this, I probably shouldn't have included the Lackeys because they're not really draftable cards. But just in terms of fun and we did the grouping of Og Merchants, I thought it'd be fun if Og Merchants and Lackeys were on the list. So I put them on there, and it's kind of my show, so I get to decide, and you all can just suck it. I don't care. All right, so anyway, I'm just kidding. So Super Collider up against Lackeys. Based on the meta impact, Super Collider definitely had a major meta impact. There's no doubt about that. But to me, I think I'm just going to go Lackeys because, the amount of value in, there's never been, other than Og Merchants, in terms of, small cards that just did so much. And it was amazing the amount of, versatility they would create and stuff. So I'm just going to go with Lackeys. I'm not going to blow my brain because my brain's already pretty blown. I'll let you.
So Now I definitely know. I think Super Collider was a meta that I was gone for. But from hearing from the history of what Super Collider was, and when Super Collider rotated back in, that is the card that people would always mention. It's just oh, what are the new cards? What are the cards that came back? They're oh my God, Super Collider, watch out for it. I think that Lackeys is a little bit of a cheat, and you know what? We did also give a Lackey generator card a chance. Yeah. So I'm going to say, you know what? I do think a little bit of a cheat with the Lackeys, especially undraftable. I'm going to say Super Collider was, from my understanding, super highly impactful. Okay. And we could draft it. I'm going Super Collider.
Oh, Kellen put Lackeys. Lackeys are going through. But it's fair. This is, again, I don't know. It's funny because
I think with Lackeys, if certain, they can impact, meta impact, again, there's more ways of generating Lackeys across multiple classes, but there's also inconsistency. The taunt one was not always, especially as time got later on, it was just and the dragons got more impactful. It was just oh, if I don't get a dragon and my opponent has a Lackeys and they get a dragon, it was just there was some inconsistency there. But Lackeys are super fun. I get it.
All right, so next we've got Burrowing Scorpion, which you're all very familiar with. 4-mana 5/2 beast, deals 2 damage, and if it kills the minion, it gives it stealth. And then we've got Hysteria at 3 mana, which it was originally. Now it's at 4 mana, but this is being evaluated at 3 mana. And you target. Actually, it changed twice because it. Well, go ahead.
I will say this with Hysteria. So it was originally right a 3/3 that target a minion and it attacks the minion till it's dead. If we are going by the pure initial, if we're going by that initial thing where it could target your own minions, my prediction is that Hysteria is going to be in the last 2 brackets at least.
Right.
It's Scorpion's great and it was super impactful, but if we're going with the pure Hysteria is arguably shouldn't even be printed in its current state right now.
Right.
And in its initial state, it's a joke of balance. So yeah, Hysteria.
Yeah, Hysteria it's not close. Scorpion is I don't think Scorpion was a terrible include, but there are a lot.
It's a good include. I think it was, but initial Hysteria is wow. What is that card?
yeah. And it's funny. So if you guys remember in history, there was a card called Mass Hysteria, and that card made all the enemy, like random minions would attack each other until, they were all, I guess it was until they were all dead, or how did that work? I guess, no, they would all attack random ones, I guess.
Each
one attack each or whatever, sorry.
Yeah.
It was just a crazy card, but anyway, it was basically how they made Battlegrounds, that kind of thing. But yeah, I always said that Battlegrounds was a mass hysteria calculator. But the funny thing is this card is so much stronger because it is so much easier to calculate and control what will happen when it's only on their side of the board. That just it's a slam dunk. It's hysteria. It's got to definitely, it's a contender to get near the end, I think, for sure. All right, so we're down to the last.
I would not be surprised if that's the winner.
I could see it. So next we've got Giggling Inventor versus Embiggen. Remember, this is Giggling Inventor at 5 mana. It's funny, it got nerfed to I think it got nerfed to 7, then went to 6.
7 or something or so.
No, it went to 7, then it went to 6, and then it went back to 5 again. But it's, regardless, we're evaluating it at 5, which is the initial. It was a 5 mana 2/1 that summoned 2 Annoyatrons. Which, let me tell you, you might think that a 2 mana 1/2 taunt with Divine Shield is not that scary, but when you have to get 4 attacks through, it's really hard, and it can really make it. It basically gives you the ability to dictate all the trades, because it takes your opponent so long to get through. Then we also have it up against Embiggen, which is 0 mana Druid spell that gave all of your minions in your deck +2/+2, but they couldn't cost more, but they cost 1 more. So. Yeah. So pretty interesting. Actually, this one was on the list partly because of Idwakta. When I made the initial post, he made a comment about how crazy his win rate was. And I don't think some reason this card wasn't on my radar. There was just, there's just so many cards.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he mentioned it, I'm like, wait, why am I not including this card? So anyway, I put it on there. This one's pretty interesting. I think I'm going to go with Giggling here. As much as I love Druid and Embiggen was good, I just don't think the impact on Embiggen was as massive nearly, even though the power level of Embiggen could arguably be higher, but I just don't think the impact was as great. So I'm going to go with Inventor.
I wasn't around for Boomsday, which I think is the same time as Super Collider. I heard the horror stories. Of Giggling Inventor, and I did get a chance to play with Embiggen, and it's nice, but I think Inventor, this is that they're both kind of unique-ish, but Embiggen is kind of Embiggen's not so unique as in the same way as it's kind of doing what Ramp is doing,
right?
Your cards cost more, right? There is comparable cards. Giggling Inventor as that neutral was, from what I understand, just so devastating and so hard that unless you have, we'll have a pick coming up here. Unless you had a card like one of our the last cards, it was just very difficult to go through. I go with Inventor here.
Okay. Looks like Kel also went with Inventor, so that'll be moving on. And now, guys, to our last and final head-to-head matchup of the first round here. We have Psychic Scream, which was a 7 mana. It was a pre-spell, 7 mana. Put all minions on the board into your opponent's deck.
And oh boy, is it back!
And it's back. And then we got Dragon Maw Scorcher, which was a 5 mana 3/6 dragon. It was a neutral card, and it dealt 1 damage to all minions. Now Scorcher was definitely an impact kind of card. But the thing is I have to pick Psychic Scream because I'm telling you, man, that meta when it first came out, Priest was insane for so long during this meta, and I remember that I was doing call-ups with Shady here and there, and it was yep, if we pick Priest, it's going to be about 4.5 hours. So because the games were Priest versus Priest matchups were just they just keep cycling cards in the deck and cycling cards in the deck, and it's just but I do remember the first time I traded my worm into my opponent's worm, and I put 14 worms into their deck. That made me feel good. Yep. But yeah,
I'll put it this way: Scream is back right now, and when I'm playing against Priest, it's more. Not only is it more likely that they have a Scream, but there's times where I'm much more worried that they have a Scream than they have a Soulmere. Yeah. And Soulmere's nuts, right? We're not including legendary cards in this fact, but the fact that it's just oh, there are times Scream's just better than that.
Right.
Like so we talked about Light Bomb earlier, and I didn't give, Light Bomb for me lost to Puzzle Box as our first pick. And this is kind of an interesting little callback, because here I think Scream is the like, if we look at those, those cards, Scream is really consistently doing like what it. Now I'm curious if Scream and Puzzle Box will go up against each other, because Scream is a true mark of consistency. It's just get silence and get rid of everything, and on top of that, it even has this benefit of oftentimes diluting the deck of the opponent, their draws,
right.
Because in general, you're going to be putting some good things in their deck, but more bad things than good things because of how boards develop in Arena. Psychic Stream is another card that it's going to go far.
Yeah, and the thing was, I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. If you mentioned this, I apologize. I'm repeating, but it was like the first board clear where basically it's like, oh, you have a death rattle? Yeah, that doesn't matter. Because it doesn't, it just it puts the card in the deck. It doesn't destroy it.
Yeah, it effectively silences, right?
Yeah, it's if, I mean, I guess eventually there became, Plague. But the problem with Plague was it was 9 mana, and it was just too expensive. Scream was just better in like every single way, because it was 2 mana cheaper. It dealt with everything better, and then you could heal on the same turn. You could play stuff with it. I've never really liked board. Yeah. So
the draw dilution is the thing. Yeah.
And looks like Kellen put Scream, so that's going through. We did it. I'm sorry, I guess I didn't realize this was going to take quite as long as it did. But it's tough discussions. I'm sure we got some wrong, but let me tell you, and again, I'm not trying to like defend myself too much, but let me just say one thing. For anybody that's saying like, how did this card not make it, or how could you put this card on the list? I challenge you, take all the cards in Hearthstone and give me a list of 64. Just go through the process and see how hard it is. I'm serious. It was actually eye-opening for me. Like, I didn't really think about how hard it would be. I just kind of was like, oh, this will be fun. And it is fun, but it is like, it's just really hard. Like, you start getting to a point where it's like, well, you have to make cuts somewhere, and you basically are forced to make mistakes because there's just no way to take like thousands of cards and just kind of like neatly package them in a bow and be like, well, we got the perfect list. It just doesn't happen. So, but man, did you have fun, Isherwood?
Yeah, it was a fun discussion. I'm looking forward to hearing what people think about what I said.
Well, no, I mean, honestly, I'm excited I'm excited for the next couple rounds. I unfortunately don't. So we're going to wrap things up here. Let me just explain a little bit of an overview of what's going to happen going forward to end this grand arena tournament that we're doing. But this is going to do it for the 21st episode of the Calcast. This has been one of the most special ones we've ever done. Remember that you can join us live 8 p.m. Eastern every week on Twitch, or you can download the podcast wherever you get them every Monday. You can also find me on Twitch where I stream 7 a.m. Eastern, or you can check me out on YouTube or Twitter by searching Keldar. That's Keludar. Make sure you give Isherwood a follow, and I'm pretty sure you just follow Isherwood on every social media. Is that all your social medias?
I'm on Twitch mainly, and you know what? I'm on Twitter sometimes. Like when I'm on special events like this, I will post it on Twitter typically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have my own Discord, but come to my channel and
right.
join through that as well. But mainly, find me on Twitch, Isherwood.
And what time do you stream every day?
Normally starting noon Pacific. With some flex some way or the other, but I usually stream for a couple hours. So if you're US time, if you like in the midday, check it out. Usually I'm on, and if I'm elsewhere, like there's a good chance I'm doing a co-op. I'll post it on Twitter and Discord as well.
So anyway, guys, so let me just kind of do a small recap. So that we just got through the first round. So what's going to happen going forward is we're going to finish this off within a week. It will get easier as we go because there'll be a lot less cards each round to go through. So what's going to happen is we're going to have a very special guest and a special episode on Saturday that's going to actually be at a different time, which I'm going to explain in a second here. But we're going to do the second round midweek this week, just so that it's kind of like a continual thing a little bit. So on Wednesday, we're going to do, I don't know the time yet, and I will announce that on Twitter and everywhere that you want to look for it. So just make sure you follow my social media to know. But we're going to do that sometime on Wednesday. We're going to do the second round with Kellen. And then what's going to happen on Saturday, we're going to do a special episode with the first time ever that we've actually had 3 extra guests, so 5 total people. We're going to do the final rounds, which will be basically 16 cards left until the end. We're going to do that at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific on my Twitch channel. So it'll be a different time, a little bit earlier, but it'll also include Dreads, ADWCTA, and Merps. So we're going to have the Lightforge / Grinning Goat with us, and also Dreads. So that'll be the first time 3 of them have been on the podcast. So that's pretty exciting for me. All 3 guys I'm really good friends with and have looked up to for a long time. So I'm really excited. It's kind of a funny story, but the Lightforge podcast is literally the reason that I ever became an Infinite player or even became a streamer, really. So it's an honor to bring them on. So that'll be really fun. Remember that you can also make sure you check the link below for a link to the tournament. If you want to like figure out like what was up against what, you can kind of follow it that way. So there'll be a link below the show note within the show notes for the tournament bracket, which we'll keep updated. And also thanks to John Laux for the music used in the episode. You can find all the links in the contributors as well. This has been the Calcast. We'll see you on Wednesday for round 2. All right. See you guys later.
We doing any swears?
Well, of course we are. Do you have something to swear about, Ish?
I mean, are you ready?
Listen, I'm just curious. Did you listen to the last time you went on a blippity blip? I actually
yes. Yeah.
Did you listen? Because I've worked hard on that. It took me 3 hours, but I did it. Maybe not do that again, right, but
I will be much more limited. But I am ready whenever.
Okay, let's go. Let's go. Go.
All right. I'm going to enunciate really well. Fuck Priest. Fuck Hysteria. Fuck Psychic Scream.
Fair enough. I think that's short and sweet, but I like it. I mean, yeah, those are.
I mean, I can go on if you need me. I mean, I can go fuck Mind Control Tech.
Yeah.
Bunch of stuff.
Oh man, I'm just so right now as a post-show thing. I'm just like, I hope I didn't make any mistakes, and I'm actually curious if Kellen will. I'm really curious what Kellen will think of like some of the ones maybe he voted for that didn't make it or something. It'll be interesting.
Inherently, because we're not following like a direct rule set and there's going to be opinion involved, we've made mistakes, and I think that's the thing. It's like that's fine, right? Like like it's fine, right? Like there's partiality. I know I was inconsistent with some of my reasoning in between the picks, but again, it's hard, especially with that going so long, like being consistent through everything and using the same evaluation across the board. But yeah, if chat wants to let me know now what my big mistakes are, let me know, and I'll tell
well, you know what I can tell. You know what? Again, here's my rant for the day. For anyone that says I was wrong about my list, fuck you.